Where if she's getting retired early, like years, really similar issue.
I like the energy and it's really exciting.
This thing is really scary. I like before that. I think that's, I think that's one that they're like.
All right, everybody. Welcome to a joint work session for the Silverton Board of Trustees and San Juan County Commissioners. It is 5:08 p.m. and we're calling this work session to order. And tonight we've got JJ presenting on behalf of Community Builders, the Town of Silverton Compass Master Plan draft.
Thank you. And my colleague Clark Anderson will be here. He texted me a little bit ago and got tied up in traffic in Uray of all things. rush hour traffic on the other.
Tell them to take the back roads. Go around and.
Don't tell him that. We've driven over in his.
That's what I had to do this morning.
One of the scariest days of my life. Anyway, thank you, Shane. Again, my name is JJ Folsom. I'm a planner with Community Builders. We are a nonprofit organization. You all know who we are. I don't need to go through all that, right? Yeah. We've been at this process. I've been at it for just over a year now. I started Community Builders in June of 2021. Clark and crew have been at it for almost 2 years now, between working with brownfields and doing some initial work there, and then going and partnering with the town on this process. I have slides. Were you able to get those slides up, Nathan? We can go through those, but just I want to remind you all of, just some background here. Like I said, we've been working on this over a year. What you have in front of you on the hard copy is just the executive summary. We have emailed all of you probably countless times. I apologize for that because you're all on numerous committees. The draft master plan. So the illustrative draft plan is out. The entire community has had it for a couple of weeks now. So I think we are at about a 95%, there he is, a 95% complete status of the process. So Gloria just informed me we're going to Planning Commission in September 12th. Is that correct?
September 19th.
19th. And then whatever the dates are, in September, we're going to Planning Commission, and then we'll come to the trustees for the first reading and potential adoption of this plan. I'm really excited. If you go to the next slide, please, too. Really excited to say that we have talked to or heard from over 50% of your community, and that is in my profession. So I've been a planner, a city planner, town planner, transportation for a long time, over 25 years. And percentage wise, to have that percent of participation in a community is unheard of. Like as a planner, I always think of like 20-25% is like hitting it out of the park. To hear, and granted, you're small, so there's this economy of scale, but to hear from 300 people, over 300 people, 350 in a town of 650 to 700, depending on what source you look at or who you talk to. That, I think that's awesome. I mean, your community deserves a big hand for participating in this plan. And I'm not talking about just like somebody came to a meeting one time. I mean, there are a few of those. People show up. People come to meetings. We did half of this project virtually, numerous virtual meetings, and people show up for that. As I mentioned, the plan is out there. People have seen it. We desire all input still. We've been getting emails. Every day I get a few emails with questions and comments, mostly like praise, like everything's looking great. A few details here, nuances. There's a lot of recommendations in here. And by no means are we going to regurgitate the plan to you tonight. It's just not possible. There's so much in there. So please, I hope you've looked at it. Please look at it further after tonight. And if, when you get into the details, if you have questions, let us know. So tonight really is just an overview to the plan. So any questions on that before we dive into it?
No, I don't think so. My name's Ernie Coleman. We've been into this some, but not very much. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. yeah, we've talked to your colleagues several times throughout this process. And yeah, very excited. So with that, let's go into what this document shows. So as I mentioned, next slide. The contents of this document and how to use this document. So that's up front not in the executive summary you have, but in the main PDF that you have of the entire document. So the way it's laid out, the executive summaries first, then we talk about background, community process, a little bit of history about Silverton, some Ute history, and then we go into vision, values, and goals. We spent, even before I started at Community Builders, Clark spent a lot of time going through visioning process with some former colleagues and the valuing process. And then I came in sort of in the middle of the values and the goals process. And we spent a lot of time with your community just getting to understand what people love about this place. So that's kind of sets the stage for the document. Then we go into what I call the, like meat and potatoes, the strategies and actions. How do we get there? How do we keep the vision and the goals of the community, but really look at hard issues like housing issues and economy and diversifying your economy and creating new jobs, those really tough issues. And then one thing I'm really proud about in this plan is the implementation section. So it's not just a bunch of recommendations that we hand it to you and go off to our next project and say, good luck. Here's a bunch of things for you to do. We spent a lot of time researching and looking at different funding opportunities. There, as you're all well aware, there's a lot of grant opportunities out there. A lot of grant projects happening in your town right now. Kudos, Gloria, on some of the housing projects happening. And then monitoring. So we think with a plan, this is a 10-year plan. I don't think I said that at the beginning. You should be monitoring this over, whether it's biannually, annually, of what did we do this year and what are we going to do next year? And I know we participated in the trustee retreat back in May, and they set some goals, and it's super exciting to see already. This is already happening in the counties. You all are working together. So all really exciting stuff. All right, so that's the document itself, how it's laid out. All right, so now we're going to just give a fairly brief overview, try to keep it brief. As I mentioned, it's tough. This is 100 and something page document with a lot of detail in it, but we're going to try to just cover the highlights of that document. And again, I encourage you all to spend more time on the whole thing if you can. It's a lot, or whatever sections you're passionate about, and get back to us with specific comments. And most of you have done that already, and we really appreciate that. So the engagement process, I'm just going to go real quickly here for the sake of time. Like I mentioned, we had incredible amount of engagement. I pretty much already covered everything on this slide, so I'm just going to go to the next one. And part of that engagement, also one thing I'm really proud of, and you should be proud of with your community, is the amount of the variety of discussions we had. So we had 25, what I'd call small group discussions. You can see some of the photos where it's just 2 or 3 people sitting at the coffee bear talking about an issue. We did that numerous times, every trip. I was just talking to Ernest earlier. I think this is my 5th trip here on this project. Clark, who knows, dozens, I'm sure. Should have bought a barbecue. Yeah, right. We've been helping the local economy, that's for sure, with hotel stays and meals. Task force meeting. So we have a task force group that we've been reporting to. A few of you are a part of that. Walk shops. So just walking around with community members, talking about things on the ground. Open houses, 10 open houses. Again, and this is over 1.5 years or so. Larger community workshops. As when this project started, we were full on in COVID. So a lot of stuff happened virtually. We had to do it, but as soon as we could, it was last September when we had our first real big workshop. We did it outdoors at the Kendall. A lot of you were there. It was awesome. 50 people or so. And just the point there, people show up. A lot of people show up at these meetings, at the open houses in particular. And then I mentioned a lot of online activities, some surveys, webinars. We did a whole series of webinars earlier this winter, and then action planning team. So we, as we started preparing the strategies and recommendations for this plan, we with the help of the town, when I say we, I mean we collectively, utilized you all to create these committees on housing, the economy, nature, and then governance, and had 12 or so meetings with that group. Next slide, please. So the values, Clark, you want to talk a little bit about this? Since you led this process, I can take a sip of water. We're going to kind of tag team here back and forth.
Sure. Thanks for your patience. I had an exciting trip over.
Tell us who you are and who you.
Oh, yeah,
bet.
sorry.
Clark Anderson, community builder, has been working with you guys for good little chunk of time now, and really excited to be here talking about the final plan that I remember talking with you all virtually about in the middle of COVID. So it's exciting to be at this point. So we began the process with questions that were intended to really get at the heart of what matters to people here. And those are, what we call a values-based process. It's the beginning of this whole effort was really rooted in that. And the idea is to really understand, the answers to three different questions. What do you love most about your community? What are your biggest fears or concerns? And then what are your greatest hopes and aspirations? And all of those have sort of a values orientation to them. And they give us a lot of information to get started with. And one of the things it does is it shifts us away from some of the black and white, which can be good. You got to get there eventually, but it allows us to try to understand what we agree on. Because a lot of times in community discussions about complicated things like housing and growth and the economy, it's really easy to disagree about stuff. But if we can agree on a few things, like we do want this to be a place where families can make it. We do want this to be a place where different people have a level of economic opportunity that they can make a go at this community. Then from there, we can work on strategies. So from that work, we arrived at these core strategies that we feel are a really good root and foundation for everything you guys are going to do. And one way to think about values too, as a tool, is as your community changes, because all communities change, these are the things you hope stay with you and stay true, right? Goals are like that you're planning to change. Your whole, a goal is where you want to be in the future down the road. This is the stuff that as you change and as you navigate change, you keep the same. And one of those things is you want to continue to be a real town with real people. We heard that very loud and clear. You want this to be a place where it doesn't get hollowed out and kind of lose its sense of character because its characters can't make it here anymore, right? So we want it to be that kind of town. We want this to be a place where there continues to be this amazing connection to nature that you all have. People, across all different sort of perspectives and backgrounds and experiences, and whether they came here for the skiing or they've been here for generations because of the mining, people love the connection to the land. And that's something that you all hold very true as a community and you want to hold on to. Similarly, but actually a different value we identified is the access to recreation, being able to have the opportunity to quickly go out and be able to enjoy such an amazing sort of wonderland of recreational opportunities. So that's something, those are things you guys want to hold on to. This is a place today where, just driving into town, you can see it. It's a cool place to raise a family. It's a place where kids can truly still be kind of free range and run around. And, if your kid's 3 blocks down the road, I would imagine that's probably okay because somebody's got their eyes on them. And there's a lot of communities anymore where you can't do that. And that's something you guys want to hold on to going forward. And finally, a really interesting one that came out of this was just that people really value the ability to participate and to be civically involved, to be involved in the community, and to be able to try to make a difference in whatever way that is. Not everybody's trying to be on town council or a county commissioner, or even part of one of the appointed boards, but they like that this is a place where that they can be involved and they can help and feel a part of the community, and sort of holding on to that sense of community is a really important, I lost your thing. A really important value. So we take over from,
Sure.
Unless you want me to.
No, that's fine. I can do goals.
Cool.
And then we'll tag team when we get to the
Sounds good.
actual strategy. So yeah, the goals. So as Clark mentioned, then the values led to goals. And we spent a lot of time. There were online surveys for this. A couple hundred people participated in these. There was a lot of wordsmithing going on to get to these actual goals. So I'm just going to read them off. Creating a year-round economy. So we know your summers are bustling, but the other seasons could use a little work. And so how do we diversify that economy and really focus on those shoulder seasons and winter? As well, making strategic investments, so projects and plans that benefit the community, and these range from infrastructure improvements to like your water and sewer treatment plant, to improving sidewalks and streets, to beautifying parks, which you're doing all of these things already, but continuing to do that. And then responsible growth and development. You're going to grow. You're a desirable place. You're already growing. How do you do that in a responsible way where you can contribute to and still keep your sense of place? Protecting the environment. So a lot of people moved here because of the environment. I reread the stat today. 89% of San Juan County is public land. Is that real? That true? That's got to be one of the highest in the country for any county. Yeah, so 89%. So, that's why a lot of people are here. You have this incredible environment. People are loving it to death, in some locations. So I hiked up to Ice Lake today. I couldn't believe how many people were out there on a Monday. Yeah, all things.
It's the town that never.
It's true. So protecting that and moderating it, enhancing it. So that's major goal there. Housing choices. We were talking about this earlier. You're not alone in Silverton, the entire state, the entire country, the world for that matter. Expanding your housing choices kind of at all levels, from the lowest earners to the highest earners, having a variety and creating housing. And it's kind of like a chicken or an egg thing when you're talking about building a year-round economy. We've heard so many stories like, we want our restaurants to be open later. We want to expand our business, but we can't get people to move here because either they can't afford to live here and we can't pay them enough, or there's really nowhere to live. So looking at those housing choices, excuse me. And then that sense of community, big goal there, similar to the one Clark just ended on, strengthening that sense of community and our civic health, working together. People disagree in any town. Your town has had its disagreements, but we've all, even through this process, we've seen a fair amount of that, and people come around and come together. So keeping that sense of community and your civic health. So those are the goals. And now we're really going to dive into how do you achieve all these goals? These are, some of them sound like pretty lofty goals. So this is where I talked about earlier, where we get into the strategies and then the actions of how to accomplish those strategies. So again, I'm not going to read all of these. I'm going to read the big picture ones, and then we'll dive into some of the highlights of each of these strategies. So I mentioned it already. And there's some nuance between goal and strategy. Goal is a little bit higher level. Strategy is like getting into the details there. Am I saying that right? How do you get into this? So improving our.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Silverton had to change. We were a mining town.
Right.
From the very beginning.
Yeah.
And that was hard for old farts like me
Sure.
to understand. And we had 200 kids in school.
Yeah.
And we had a nice assessed valuation. And
Yeah.
mines were operating.
Yeah.
But we don't have that now.
Right.
So we've got to change to tourism and recreation.
Yeah, you're right on. And that you'll see when we get to that section, when Clark talks about the economy, some ideas that the community's brought up and we've hashed out on how you can basically replace mining with other industries or other types of jobs. Improving the infrastructure. So I mentioned that. Investing and upgrading your utilities, place-based investments like parks, like you're doing at Columbine Park, which is beautiful. We've made improvements at Memorial Park, the Kendall Base area is happening. And then strengthening our local economy. I talked about this a little bit earlier, expanding that winter economy and expanding the shoulder seasons for looking at all different kinds of job opportunities, recreation.
We get into all these in the things. Should we just go to?
Yeah, we probably ought to.
Because we're going to say the same thing.
We are going to say the same things. Thank you, Clark. That's why I have him show up here. So keep me in line. All right, good point. Yeah, so let's go. Oh, we lost him.
I got you.
Okay, strategies and actions, and then next slide. We're going to dive right into it. So improving our infrastructure. So some of the priority strategies. Oh, and while I'm on this slide, I'm going to spend a little bit of time to just describe how this entire section is laid out. And I have some notes here because there's so much in here. I want to make sure I don't forget. So every strategy looks similar to this, where we repeat the goal statement for that strategy. We have a blurb on why this strategy is important to focus on. And then if you go to the next slide, then we identify a timeline. So is this and we give short term is like 0 to 18 months, midterm 18 months to 5 years, I believe, and then long-term 5 years and beyond. So each of the actions and strategies have that timeline. And then we provide a responsible parties, like who should be leading this effort. You'll see, Gloria's talked to it like, whoa, there's a lot of it from the town. And they're like, well, yeah, it's a town master plan. So the town will have a lot of responsibility, but you'll also see we provide other folks in there, counties listed several times, and, other, whether they're agencies like the BLM, the Forest Service, or other nonprofits. So it's not just town and county working on this. You have partners in here. And then funding sources, as I mentioned earlier. So that's how each of these sections are laid out. Next slide, please.
One last thing too, and this was you can see this on the previous slide. There's sort of like left brain people and right brain people. We know that. So we have this is for the people who want the details, and this is for people who want the story.
Yeah.
So we tried to provide both. I'm a story guy. He's a detail guy.
Works great.
We battled it out and said, let's do both. And so you need them both. And so that's why it landed that way. It's a little bit of a trade-off in terms of, a little bit of extra paper, but we felt it would be helpful to have the context and sort of explanation that's provided here, along with the tactical details that are provided in the tables.
That's a great way of putting it. Because Clark's right. I was like, they need to know exactly what to do and have the layout. Like, yes, some people need that, but other people really need to know why. What's the story behind that? Why do we need to focus on the sewer system? And so I think we ended up with a great hybrid, honestly. So next slide. So here's where we get into the details. And of course, we're not going to go through every one of these all night long. We're going to touch on some of the highest priorities. So strategy A, investing in maintenance and upgrades of your utilities. You know this. We've heard this from countless folks. You need to invest in yourselves, and you're doing this. You're doing some of it. You need to upgrade your sewer and your water, and you need to look at your power, look at redundant power sources as a possibility. There's recommendations in here about alternative resources, renewable resources. But the highlight really is the sewer, water, power, and broadband. Broadband, a lot of people brought up broadband, and in transportation, we call it, fixing that last mile. When you're on transit and you have to get off transit and walk somewhere, that's called the last mile. For broadband, and in Silverton, broadband's like the last 50 feet or the last 100 feet. Like, oh, there's great broadband down Green Street, but if we live 2 blocks off, like we're out of luck, or it's really slow. So really focusing on your broadband. And then place-based investments. So I mentioned that some of the highlights in this one are community recreation, a venue with music, performing arts, whether that's all in one space or it's spread out. We've had many conversations with the school district. They have this incredible piece of property. Where am I? We're like right here, the Stanley Plaster site. That's an opportunity, and the school board and the district's on board with some of those ideas. But yeah, a venue with music, performing arts really rose to the top as far as an action item there. Pocket parks, like I said, you're doing that with Columbine. People have expressed a desire for more of those. Let's find another location in town where we can do another Columbine park, maybe on the north end of town or maybe on the south end of town. Relocating and rebuilding the skate park. I know there's some skaters in the crowd back here. That came up a lot with the younger groups and parents too. Like, you have this sort of old wood half pipe, you know what that is? One of those half pipes. Yeah, I'll demonstrate.
It's just on it this weekend.
Place for kids to skateboard. And right now, the mediocre one that you have is way on the other side of town, hard to get to. So looking at possibly, relocating that, making it more central, trailhead improvements, bike and pedestrian improvements throughout town, sidewalks, lighting, signage, good wayfinding signage so people know where, how to get to the Kendall if you're walking down Green Street or walking down Blair. Gateways at the entrance of town. So as you come into town right now, you have that banner. It's cool, like welcome Silverton, but there are other ideas that have been thrown out there of how can we create a nicer gateway, roundabout's been tossed out. That interchange, we'll get to that in a little bit, but the intersection as you come into town, that could be improved as well. We in the community have some ideas on that way too, or on that location. The Kendall Mountain Recreation Area Plan. So you have another planning, I won't call it a planning process, an implementation process going on right now concurrently. The town has hired DHM out of Durango to carry on some of ideas that have been talked about for years at Kendall. Some of those are, looking at not just winter improvements there. So Nordic skiing's big, enhancing your Nordic trails, maybe a tubing hill, which I don't believe exists now. I mean, people can hike up there and tube, but like a formalized tubing hill where you can hang on to the lift and pull you up, but really improving mountain bike trails, hiking trails, summer access, and again, focusing on those shoulder seasons, spring and fall. You have amazing spring and fall here too. So looking at opportunities like that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Kendall. And alpine skiing. I mean, we can't overlook that ski expansion has been discussed for many, many years. It's been discussed a lot during this process. So looking at opportunities for modest ski expansion, still keeping it as a family-oriented ski area, but potentially adding a little more vertical and maybe a lift or two. So I'm just going to leave it at that because you have a process where that's being talked about. But in order to expand your winter economy, some of all of the above of those improvements should be looked at. Next slide, please. So this is a diagram, and again, I won't go into the details here, but complements some of those pedestrian ideas I talked about. And these are one thing I didn't mention at the beginning. We've done a thorough analysis and we've reviewed all your previous plans. You have done for such a small town and county. You have done a lot of plans. So obviously, we looked at the 2010 joint master plan that you all did together. We've looked at the Animas River Corridor plan. We've looked at the Bakers Park Trails plan, numerous plans. And so we've pulled ideas out of all those plans that are still valid today and vetted those community. But again, I mentioned this earlier, really focusing on sort of what we call the core of your town, Green Street and Blair, making sidewalk connections between the two. You'll be walking, you all know this. I've noticed it numerous times because I'm a geek like that, of walking down like, well, I was just on the sidewalk. Now I'm on dirt. I'm on the sidewalk again. What's up with that? So looking at connections like that and improving those. Again, the gateway opportunity at the entrance on both ends of town, additional play equipment in Memorial Park. We talked about the skate park here, improvements, your Animas River. I mean, if you just implemented a quarter of what is in the Animas River corridor plan, this area just has so much potential. It talks about trails on the rivers, pedestrian bike connections over the river, improving just to look at on Kendall, improving fishing access to the river, improving the ice hockey rink, Nordic trails, just so much opportunity there from a bicycle, pedestrian, and connectivity standpoint.
The community has a lot of ideas on this. So in a way, what we try to do is make those navigable for you.
Yeah.
And hopefully you guys, as you find your way through funding and grants and things like that, can push a couple forward. I know you already are on some.
Yeah. And like I said, just taking those top ideas that were in previous plans and consolidating them here I always like to say, and I didn't make this up, that money comes to plans a lot better than plans come to money. So you have, the more you have, or did I say that
Oh,
backwards?
you nailed it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, if you have this idea listed in 4 plans and you're going after a grant, be like, look, we have a corridor trail plan that says this, our master plan says this, our last master plan says this, the county plan says this, we need to do this. I'm going to take a breath and hand it over to Clark and talk about strengthening our local economy.
The economic part of this was a really important element of it because a lot of what you brought up earlier, Ernie, your community is one that is in a way sort of figuring out its identity economically. You've been a tourism and recreation economy for a long time, but you also were a mining town for a long time. And especially during the COVID pandemic and the subsequent recovery, there was some recognition that we need to figure out sort of how to make the tourism and recreation economy work well for us, especially some of the challenges around seasonality and cyclical nature of that, and managing the high times and elevating some of the low times, and then also figuring out how do we diversify beyond that. And those aren't easy things to do in a very isolated, small mountain town that doesn't have some of the same sort of economic dynamism that you have in a metropolitan region or something like that. So it's the reason I bring this context up is it's not as though these aren't issues that you guys haven't thought long and hard about for actually a number of years. So hopefully what we've done is helped you move along a little bit, some of the ideas that you had, and we'll jump into that. If you want to go to the next one. I think one of the top line points from this strategy and this goal is really about the importance of strengthening the winter economy. Something you guys, like I said, have talked about a lot. And the goal there is just recognizing that the summer economy is good as it is to have things busy during the summer. It's challenging to accomplish some of the other goals you have as a community, to be a place that's a family-friendly community, to be a place where people have economic opportunity when it's so cyclical as it is. Now, I know that's getting better, but there's still very few relative to the overall summer businesses. There's not as many that are open in the winter. So focusing in on a couple of the priority projects at Kendall Mountain is one of the highline strategies we thought in terms of, first steps, initiating some of those, the base area planning that you guys are doing in terms of, where's the ice rink going to go? How's that going to work? Some of the trail planning that's going on. Some of those different types of place-based investments are probably a really good starting point because you've got so much work done on it. And all of the work that you want to do around sort of economic work that's sort of investing in your community also is really beneficial because those are things that help the economy, but they also make it a better place for the people who live here now. There's a lot that you can leverage off of that too. Building on the work of the chamber in terms of promotions, continuing to promote and expand the idea of sort of the multi-sport potential of this area. And especially thinking about what's possible here in the winter is another big opportunity that would relate to some of the other actions in here. And finally, there are already some things that are happening in town in terms of education and, such a hub for people who want to come and get avalanche training or something like that. So when we talk to people in the community that worked for MSI and things like that, there was really sort of recognition, like we'd like to do more of that. We should find ways strategically, both working with, Region 9, Chamber, San Juan Development Alliance, and, figuring out all those ways to figure out how do we leverage what we've got there and expand it. Some of that is probably a challenge of facilities. So that relates to some of the other dynamics that we talked about earlier. Let's see, what else do we want to make sure we covered? So moving into the, can go to the next strategy. There's a lot there, but we're just trying to pull a couple top lines out. So any community that wants to try to build a healthy economy has to think about how do we be a place where our existing businesses and those who might like to start businesses can be successful. Because good old fashioned entrepreneurship is where most of the jobs come from in any economy. It is false that we attract jobs to our community. It doesn't work. What we really do is we create, we enable the potential for entrepreneurship. And then over time, yeah, businesses do come, but more often than not, they're coming from within. So wanting to make sure that we continue to connect businesses to the resources that are there. So again, you've got San Juan development, and you've also got the chamber. So you've got some good entities doing that work, but continue to kind of help provide resources to businesses that are here or would like to be here. A lot of the businesses that we talked to said, and you hear this all the time, so this is not knocking on you guys as local governments, but they said the process can be challenging. Again, you hear that all the time. So what you want to try to do is say, what about it? And some of the things we learned is just making sure that there's a clear roadmap for how we get through the process and an understanding of the different steps along the way. And I know you have some of those resources, but building those systems is one of the things that, can you redo this guy?
Yeah.
That we heard a lot about. Here, you want to switch places? While he's pulling, oh, okay, cool. I can continue to look over here.
Yes.
We had some good conversations around this next strategy C, which is, how do you support the creative industries, which is really a way of talking about stuff where we're making stuff. Okay. And you guys aren't going to be a place where you have a huge manufacturing base in Silverton. Actually, for the size that you are, you have a pretty incredible manufacturing base as it is, because there are people who make stuff from here and sell it other places. But it's a good thing to have in a community. It's a creative part of an economy that if you can support it, it both adds to sort of quality in life and character of the community. But it's also a great entrepreneurial opportunity for people to have. So making sure that that's feasible through your regulations is kind of one of the really easy things you guys can do. One of the things we recommend in the land use section, you'll see this is your what has traditionally been called your ED zoning is predominantly residential today. So one of the things we're recommending is shifting away from that as a zone district, continuing to allow certain neighborhood, we're calling it neighborhood mixed use. So it would be sort of commercial uses that are neighborhood friendly. So things that fit in a neighborhood, because that's what those places are today. So enabling that and making sure that that's clear in your policies is something you can do so that people who want to have who want to build garages in their basement or garages in their basement, guitars in their basement and sell them to people back in Tennessee. There's a dude in town who does that, and who want to do sort of small creative or craft type industries out of their home or out of a small building and be able to sell that either to people that are visiting or out of the community, that they can do that. And also being really cognizant that there's limits to what that could be. It was Clem who said, I wouldn't want venture in town. So that's not to say you should allow everything, but to be able to, as you guys update the code in line with what we've identified here, that there are certain commercial uses that make it feasible for people to do those types of creative things. There's also a really good starting point with the creative district and sort of supporting the work that they're doing, because there's a lot of good economic benefit that can come out of that. Next slide. Okay, cool. It's back to JJ.
All right. So land use, growth, and development. This is the.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Cool.
The easy topic here, right? So there's a lot in here. And then the next topic is housing. And it's hard to separate the two, but because housing is so important and there were so many recommendations that are just specific to housing and not land use, we talked about that for a while. We broke it out into two, but there'll be some overlap here because you can't, like I just said, when you're talking about changing your code and from a land use standpoint, you've got to talk about it at a high level of land use and then dive into the details of housing. Next slide, please. So an update to local land use policy. So Clark started mentioning this. The town's already doing this. They're aware of that their code needs to be updated. And the great news is they have a contract planner who specializes in that, as well as many other aspects of town planning and going to help you with that. We started helping through this process with that, doing an initial code audit. Some of the specifics here are, Clark just mentioned it, reducing the number of zone districts for a town this small, having having 8 or 9 zone districts. It's kind of crazy, honestly. I mean, there's so many nuances, and there's been a lot of spot zoning, and, something got built here. So somebody said, oh, we should draw the line around here. We think that, we collectively think that should be simplified, and we'll have there's a diagram in the plan that shows that. Updating dimensional standards to promote more affordable and attainable housing types of, like this image here on the bottom right. What looks like a pretty simple image. This is a 25-foot wide lot with an accessory dwelling unit behind it. You couldn't build this today under your existing codes, but just by relaxing some things as simple as 2 feet on a setback on both sides, you have examples of these. The shotgun houses all throughout town can be done. There are excellent examples of modern versions in many other mountain towns, and some even in this town that you've built. So relaxing those standards or changing them, maybe relaxing is not the right word, modifying some of the dimensional standards will help promote more variety of building types and housing types in particular. Creating, Clark talked about this a little bit, some checklists. So visual checklist, a pattern book for developers. So you'll see in the next series of slides, our team has prepared several images that could be part of that pattern book. Like, here's how you do an accessory dwelling unit. Here's how you do a single family home on a 25-foot lot. Here's how you do it 2 homes or a duplex or a triplex on a 50-foot wide lot. So actually having a pattern book that developers can look through and be like, yeah, that works great. And it helps your planning staff as well for approvals on
That
those.
term, just real quick,
Yeah.
pattern
Yeah.
book is like
Yeah.
kind of a geeky planner word.
Yeah, sorry.
It's like
Guidebook.
It's
Yeah.
like a recipe
Betty
for
Crocker.
certain type of development. And what you can do as a community is you can say, this is you take your code, you take some projects that fit your code that you're like, this is stuff we want to be able to encourage. We've kind of talked through it. We know it's good. And you're not saying people have to build it, but you're saying, if you build that, you're all set. Like, we've done the work for you, so you can come in and you can know that this is buildable. We've looked at it from a development perspective. It's feasible from that perspective, an engineering perspective, and you can know you can do it. So it gives you sort of, here's the recipe, follow this recipe, and our process is really easy. And that, for people who are trying to invest in a mountain town where there's a lot of risk involved, and it makes it harder to create some of the housing choices you guys need. In particular, it pertains to housing. That's something you can do that'll help on the development side, but it'll also really help because you guys are never going to have enough capacity and staff.
Yeah.
It's never going to stop. You're a small town with lots of stuff, and you constantly have staff trying to do more than they probably can and should. And so giving them systems and tools that they can use to make it easier for them to do their jobs, so not every single project is a behemoth of work, would really make it easier for you to be more strategic and focused on long-term planning.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Next slide, please. So this was my attempt at taking, I think Gloria and your former planner, Lisa, had handed me 4 or 5, maybe like 7. I think it was 7 of different maps that showed your zoning districts. And so I took those and just real quick hand drew it out to try to get a grasp on your zoning districts. And I've read your code of what each one's allowed. There are some really minor nuances between R1A and R1. So if you go to the next slide, what I'm leading to, and I mentioned it previously, is consolidating some of those zone districts. So really looking at what Clark just mentioned, this purple area, a neighborhood mixed use zone, which really is a consolidation of your R1 and your current ED zone today. Housing and businesses are happening in those areas today. Let's try to simplify it. And again, this is just a rough sketch. There will probably still be some nuances here. It's more of a bubble diagram of that business mixed use. So this was previously called commercial or auto mixed use. This area, yeah, it's auto oriented. It's how people come into town via car, but you have Anvil going on up here. Some really cool development could happen in here in a mix of uses. You could have a variety of housing types, from affordable housing to small scale townhomes, smaller scale apartment buildings, commercial uses, that aren't competing with your main core. And then, of course, the historic core business, generally keeping that one intact as it is. You have a historic overlay zone. This is working really well. And then that's really it. And then parks, parks and open space. So consolidating 7 or 8 down to 4 or 5.
And strategically, if I can just jump in and add a couple things. I mean, so the, your kind of core business district, the business pedestrian district, we did extend that a little bit. As you can see, that was just recommendations people gave us to extend that out. And then, there's a couple strategic moves here. One is shifting away from the zoning as being, we really tried to figure out, all right, what is this place trying to be, and sort of really thinking about them as places. And that's where the neighborhood mixed use, like that, you guys want those to be neighborhoods, call it that. And it's neighborhoods that already have a mix of uses in them. And there are people who would like to potentially someday have you can envision like along the river corridor someday, this isn't happening now, but somebody wants to turn their house into a cool little cafe that overlooks Animas. That'd be cool. You don't want to make that not possible. So neighborhood mixed use, it's pretty easy. And then the residential, that stuff's residential and it's going to be residential. So it makes a lot of sense just to keep it the yellow that way. I want to note a little bit about what JJ mentioned for the entrance to town and just sort of recognizing that as an opportunity area. They're not making any more land around here. And you guys do have needs that over time, from a housing perspective and whatnot, are going to be hard to fulfill on the land base that you have today. There are certainly lots of infill opportunities and things like that, but that area over there is going to be a part of your future in one way or another. So getting ahead of the game and thinking about what would we like this to be? What type of place do we want it to be is a good idea. And whenever you're dealing with any department of transportation, in this case, we're talking about CDOT, it's kind of nice to get in front of that and say, here's our vision before they come in one day and they're like, hey, things are changing over here. We've got a plan for you. And it's a little bit more focused on sort of a state transportation perspective instead of what you guys want as a community. And that work over there will be something you'll really want to coordinate with CDOT on. We've done some initial outreach just to sort of talk to them about some of these ideas to make sure.
The best news on that is having a conversation with them. They didn't say no in the first phone call.
That's usually a good start.
I mean, that's been my experience with some.
You got to do at least a couple no's.
Yeah. To not get a no on the first conversation was excellent. Like, yeah, we can consider looking at some changes to that intersection. If you could go to the next slide. So this is a more refined version of that sketch. That sketch was produced in this room during a charrette or a design work session when we were here in April. This basically consolidates all this entire chapter, if you will, into a graphic form. So, we're calling it your future land use framework. I talk a lot about most of this, some things that and Clark just alluded to this. So the last thing we like to do as planners is to put in a recommendation that says you need to do another plan. But in this scenario, because this area is so important and the time and resources weren't available for a town-wide plan to really focus in on this area, that is one of the recommendations in this plan. And take a little bit deeper dive into the area adjacent to Anvil and Mineral Creek and this whole entrance to town, because it's a special area. Like Clark said, you want to get ahead of it before people just start.
Especially with the changes to the wastewater plant and things you have going like that. And it's just, those are called sub area plans. You guys have done them and there really are, it sounds silly to sort of have a plan that recommends a plan, but they're really good. It's a place where you orchestrate all the design details and the funding details, and communities that do those to implement vision is really practical. So don't think that's a dumb idea. It's a good idea.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention one of the coolest, and I'm going to say this for myself because I'm a bike rider and a hiker, but out of your animal corridor plan, you have what's called the perimeter trail recommendation in there. Build that. We've heard that from every majority of people in this community of like, yeah, we need to start building, and you have pieces of it, but let's really make this perimeter loop, and then you can have connections to it. You'll have connections up to the future Baker Park, making connections through Memorial Park. You already have a bridge up to River Street at Memorial. But so some of these things are starting to happen, but really focus on making that perimeter trail. It'd be one of the coolest projects ever, I think, my personal opinion. Just had to get that out there. What else on this? Oh yeah, I can't miss this one. Next slide, please. So this is the CDOT property right near that entrance to town. So we just did a quick sketch, and again, we talked to CDOT. They're not like, no way, we would never move that site. They're actually even talking about, I think, moving this site somewhere else. Just did a quick sketch of opportunity. You know, you could do a mix of housing there, affordable housing, or market rate housing, could be a cool site for that. Next slide. This is a rendering sketch, conceptual sketch of the Stanley Plaster site that we were just talking about, that school-owned site. So including potentially a community conference center with some meeting rooms, some outdoor, sorry, you all can't see this very well anyway from back. Some, outdoor space, a potential small amphitheater space right on the creek, just so much potential there. The school has talked about having, they are not open to having permanent housing on the site, but they've talked about having dormitory housing for guest students or guest lecturers, visitors, educational opportunities. There's just so many things that could happen on that site. So this was just a quick sketch of, one idea of hundreds that could actually happen out there.
The other story with this one is you guys have a lot of, I'll call them sort of civic wants in terms of sort of civic facilities, rec center, community gathering, place where you can do performances and things like that. And you don't have tons and tons of spaces for that. And so, and even I mentioned earlier, sort of the need for facilities for doing some of those educational trainings and things like that, where people can come in and do an avalanche course for a week, or they can do a week-long backcountry skiing course. Somebody's, doing that would be great for your economy, but also having some facilities where you could do those. So the idea of a lot of flex space inside these, where you can have training rooms, you can have some type of community, sort of recreational community center facility. There are a lot of people who want a pool. We're not getting to that level of detail, but it's the idea of having some flexible space. That one might be in the room, not sure. You never know. And again, what these plans are supposed to do is provide vision. This is one of those vision elements. We weren't able to get into a level of detail on this to sort of get the actual plan, but this is something where we're hoping, and we've talked to the school, grab what we've taken here and use that to help get some additional funding to sort of do the detailed site plan and the programming and the financial pro forma you need to get that done.
Awesome. Next slide. And we've already talked about this. So this is just reiterating this, creating a sub area plan for the entrance to town. One thing we didn't mention is a little deeper dive into Shrine Hill too. That is one area of town that we did not have a clear cut, like, wow, 80% of people really said this is what should happen there. It was pretty divided from, let's figure out how we can buy this land, it's private property, and turn it all into open space. That's one extreme, to let's build high-end big houses on that. That's where all those should go, to everything in the middle. So, but there was not, am I saying that right? There was not a clear cut, like, we should do this.
The only thing that was clear cut that I'd say is people recognize it right now as residential.
Yeah.
And they recognize it right now as private. So from a land use framework perspective, what we're not giving you is something that's like, we don't know what should go there. We're giving you clarity in the land use framework that says, it should be zoned residential, R1, the way it is. It should be single family residential. With single family can be duplexes and things like that. It's two different single family homes that are attached. But it's not really probably a place where you're envisioning lots of high density housing. But JJ's point is there are people who would love to see that preserved as open space. And there are also people that are open to sort of higher levels of development density, probably not super high, but fourplexes. We think that there's things you guys can do if you were to sort of say, yeah, duplexes are allowed here and accessory dwelling units are allowed with every, single family unit, that you can actually probably get a pretty nice level of sort of very light density up there that can give you guys some housing product over time. That would be a pretty good move. So, don't take from that comment that it's open. I think you guys have a good pathway forward, but it wouldn't hurt, especially when you recognize the infrastructure limitations up there that are part of why it's sort of stalled out, to figure out, especially those elements and say, all right, what do we want to make happen up here and what's going to be, frankly, sort of economically feasible, if you guys, and the people who live up there ever want to see anything happen.
Are you guys identifying density up there based on responses that you had from the community or kind of?
We don't, it's single family. It's not density. So that zone is not a dense zone. It's single family.
And duplex. So but just why do you think that that's only like,
Oh yeah. When we raised some, so one of the things we did to sort of get a feel from it is we actually had workshops where people could be like, I think this should be this. And people literally kind of drew their own bubble diagrams. And then we tried to take all those and start putting them into a couple different there's sort of like scenarios almost where you're like, well, there's some people who think this should be like, and we try to get feedback. So we talked to people about those. We had maybe 2 different types of options in terms of what would be up there. And
we really showed images, different housing types, this street on Shrine Hill
and
mansions.
That was actually a really helpful way. So we had all these different housing types and said like what fits where. And and most people were like, that area is more single family residential in character and probably, should remain that way. As I mentioned, I think there's ways to sort of have it do that and also have a modest level of light density that brings additional housing choice and also affordability, because every time you attach an accessory dwelling unit to a single family home, you make it inherently more affordable for whoever's going to buy it, right? Because somebody's paying the mortgage or helping. So that's a long-winded answer. Did that get at your question?
Yeah. I just was curious. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. Housing. So nobody was interested in this topic, unfortunately. No, there were times when this plan felt like a housing plan because there was a lot of interest in your community about how do we address housing needs for our workforce, for our community. How do we create housing that's affordable, but also how do we create housing that's, just purely market rate that people that aren't struggling with affordability can acquire, because there's a lot of people that are struggling to find housing in Silverton that aren't struggling to find it because they don't have money. There's just not any houses for them. And so, so housing was a really, really challenging or is a really challenging issue for you guys as a community. People, people want to see you guys take some action here. I think there's interest in seeing investments that are going to lead to an additional amount of workforce housing in particular. What that means from a policy perspective is you're not necessarily, you're going to want to think about how do we create housing that's going to be below market. And the challenging thing about housing is it doesn't build itself. And the cost of building something that's affordable and something that isn't affordable is pretty much the same, because you can't go to the hardware store and get like affordable nails and affordable plywood and then build an affordable home. And so, and because the land, costs what land costs, right? And those hard costs of construction cost what they cost. And for a developer to be able to sort of say, yeah, this makes sense for us, we're going to financially go in and actually put this project in, they have to be able to cover all their soft costs and some level of profit to be able to get the investment and cover the debt. So there's pretty basic pieces of making sure the housing finance works. And you guys, unfortunately, are in a place where your market isn't producing housing that when it's at a market rate, much of your community can afford. There are people who can afford it, but there's a good chunk of the community that's being left behind. And that's typical for Colorado mountain towns right now, but you want to begin getting ahead of it. So high level strategy, that's a really important thing to be thinking about. There's a couple things you're going to want to do. One of those, you can go to the next slide. One of those we already talked about, and it's the policy reform work. So I'm not going to spend any more time there. Making sure your codes make it possible to build a diverse range of housing types. And inherently in doing that, you create housing diversity, just makes different options available for different types of needs and income levels. and you boost supply, which on the old supply demand thing helps. But when you're in a market where you're seeing a lot of price escalation where you guys are, you can't build your way out of that. So at some point, you're also going to want to think about that below market part where you're going to be using tools like deed restrictions and things like that. You guys have experience with that. You guys have a model project that you've done up at Anvil Mountain. That is a good starting point for understanding how do we create long-term affordability that's going to stay that way. And you guys are using a couple different tools, right? So there's resident occupancy restrictions and price cap restrictions. So there's different tools that are available for you guys on that front. To be able to make progress on that, probably the top strategy that we have come out of this or wanting to recommend from what we've heard from the community, what we've heard from your staff, what we've heard from many of you is, we need the capacity and the resources to be able to do that. Because to be able to engage in creating and preserving workforce housing in a community like Silverton, you need resources. And you either need, at a minimum, you need the staffing and capacity to be able to go after the grants and chase the dollars that are out there to be able to do below market projects. And those are something you can find. Or even better, over time, you guys might want to think about creating some source of local funding that can be used towards delivering this type of product, because that's the most flexible and powerful tool that you could probably create, because it brings more money in. For every dollar you guys have as a local fund, you're going to bring $10 in. And so that's a big tool you can do long term. And there's a lot of different programs that are out there nowadays that you can use where you can buy down the cost of housing. You can do gap financing. There's a lot of different stuff. We won't go into detail, but strategically, I want to spend a little time there because that one is so important. And that really sort of gets at, A, B, and C in terms of the sort of strategies that are captured in that. And then, as I mentioned, we already talked about D, which is the sort of policy barriers piece. And we talked about the idea of sort of having that recipe book that you could say, these are, even if you just started with doing it for accessory dwelling units. I know that's kind of an interesting topic here now. So here's the recipe, the code recipe we want you guys to use for that. If you build to this, you could just do it. Next slide. Those programs are worth looking at more closely. I won't go too far into detail on those right now, other than to say that, again, if you guys are in a position to put some level of funding locally, whether it's a long-term dedicated source or even just an allocation, to be able to do some of this work, that really matters, whether it's for being able to bank some land. I saw that you guys just did a pretty cool thing there in the last couple, just in the paper today. So awesome. But then also to be able to partake in some of those types of programs I mentioned, that's a big deal. Anybody who wants to talk in greater detail about that, I'm like way in the weeds on this stuff right now in some other communities. So happy to do that. Next slide. So these are some of the sort of illustratives that are in the plan around some of those housing types. And again, these are the starting points for a couple different things. One, what we did is we took one of the easiest ways to see if your code's working or not is to take an actual project you might build and try to place it on an actual parcel in a community and say, like, how would you do this? Does our code allow it? And what you usually find is, no, you couldn't build this here. And so that's what we wanted to try to do. We just played around using the feedback that we got from people where we had all the bunch of images of different housing types. And we said, what do you like? What do you not like? And tell us why. And we went in and said, okay, let's take some of the stuff people like and start placing it. And that's what some of these show. So this gives us an initial sort of look at the parts of your code that are getting in the way of things that people would like to see built here. But it also, when you do the code work that you guys are going to do with your current planning contractor, a next step from that, and we'd be happy to connect with you guys to offer ideas on how you do it, would be to create that kind of, what JJ referenced as a pattern book, a toolkit where you've got, the pre-approved projects that fit of this type. Because in a place where, especially if you want to encourage sort of local mom and pop developers, and for them, it's a lot easier if it's just like, this is what if you build more of these, we'll do it. And you guys have those guys in town. We've talked to them. We've got feedback on these ideas from them for sure. So Next slide. Cool.
JJ, I'll do this. All right, well, we know it's getting 6:10 right now, so we'll try to get through these. There's two more topics, so through these quick. So environment and natural assets, as I stated earlier, I mean, this is why so many people live here. So important. You have 89% of your lands in the county are publicly accept public lands. And it's probably the area of this plan that impacts the county. It's where the county and the town have to work together closest because for that very reason. Next slide, please. So some of the major recommendations in here are assessing and mapping your conditions. So again, similar to what I was talking about on your zoning map, where there were numerous versions of that, your public lands and your public lands maps are similar. There's a lot of different versions out there that could be consolidated, need to be consolidated, honestly. So creating a system where all of these are in one place and where that lives, you know, whether it's with the county, whether it's with a private agency, probably makes more sense with the county or a public agency with turnover and whatnot. But again, just in having that regional collaboration. So all of this information is in one place. So you have, you know, pretty good GIS, geographic information systems now. And actually one of your local groups, MSI, what is that? Mountain Sports Studies, Mountain Studies, not to mix. There's another group called MSI Mountain Studies International. And they just were successful in a grant application for doing just that. So they're actually going to get started on doing some of this mapping work. So already we're seeing some implementation coming from ideas, and they were part of some of our steering committees. Some other highlights in this are federal coordination. We know how challenging that can be, but coordinating with the BLM and with your Forest Service agencies, and you know, if they're not right here in Silverton, a lot of them are out of town, and so trying to just improve that better, both with the town and the county, working with these other agencies. B here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here as we talked a lot about it already, that, you know, implementing the Animas River Corridor Plan, working on sustainable outdoor recreation management, and that kind of goes along with the economy, you know, avalanche courses like we see here, educational opportunities for experienced and new users. You know, I'm an experienced backcountry user, but I could use a little more education. I encountered a moose today on a trail. I was kind of like trying to remember, all right, what am I supposed to do here? Not go toward it. I know that. Like, back up, you know, go back. But I wasn't sure exactly. So, educating the public on, you know, what you're supposed to do when you're out in the backcountry. OHV use, mountain bike use, skier use, all of those things, just continuing. I mean, I know your community is doing a lot of that, but just continuing to do that. You're already working on vehicle staging areas. That's in here. Just, you know, making sure that you potentially partner with private agents, private entities for that. So have, like you see the signs on the side of the road, adopt a road paid for by this. Work with bars and restaurants. If you park here and use this restroom, you know, come patronize my restaurant after you go out OHV or hiking or whatever. So looking at private opportunities for some of this too, not all just dependent on public money here. What's next here? Let's go to the next slide, please. So we talked a lot about sustainable. I already talked about that. Next slide, please. Trying to wrap up here. Sustainability and resiliency. So this came up a lot with your community, you know, looking at, and I mentioned it briefly, looking at alternative forms of energy, renewable resources. So geothermal, you have a fair amount of that activity. Hydro, you know, we have 3 major creeks and rivers going through here. We're building upon some of what's already happening there. Micro, you know, there's a lot of details here, and you have some really smart people that know a lot more than I do about how to do this. So working with those groups, working with San Miguel Power to look at incentives for businesses and residents to move towards more renewable energy. Everybody's doing that. The power company, the good news is power companies are doing that too. They're realizing like we need to do this. All right, next topic. And I think this is the last strategy topic, and then we're going to wind down. So Clark, back to you on another easy one here. Building community trust and improving governance.
Yeah, we'll be quick with this. This was a little bit of a not catch all, but a couple different topics that were important, especially in the middle of the project when you guys, like a lot of other communities, were going through sort of pandemic hell, and there was a lot of division in the community around different things. And a lot of people said, we need clear actions that we can do for how do we sort of create a greater level of civic health. And not only for this moment, because the community, division is part of community. So how do we get to a place where that's something that we're better able to manage? Because you're going to have things you disagree on. You're going to have things you're going to debate over, but you want to be able to do that in a productive way where the disagreement is productive. So you can go to the next slide. So the top strategy here is actually really recognizes that, you guys have a really important community within your community that's a critical part of your economy, but that struggles and doesn't have the same level of sort of engagement and representation, and that's your Hispanic community. And so we did a lot of engagement with the Hispanic community, or tried to. It was very difficult because just the working schedules were difficult, but we were able to get some different focus groups together and work with some of the members of your community that really work on communication and engagement with the Hispanic community, and had some success learning from those folks about what their needs are. And one of the things that we learned was that there's a lot of interest in being engaged and being a part of the community, and having, there's people who have long roots in the community and really look at this as home and want to feel like they're definitely a part of the community. And so making sure that we are, we're acting in ways that support that. You guys have, when I came in, moving on to the next strategy, you guys actually have a good reputation for collaboration, the county and the town. It's great to see you guys here together tonight. You did your last master plan together, which is actually a really cool thing that you guys did. And so there's a good history there, and that's a good, you have a good foundation to build upon. At the same time, the more time we spent talking to people about all of the different things we just talked to you guys about, the more we understood and recognized that taking the collaboration that's there now and sort of lifting it up to the next level is going to be really important, because there's so many different things. Just take the last section, the last goal we were talking about, environment and natural resources. There's so many things that sort of, as the town of Silverton does and as the county do, they interrelate so much, right? When Silverton is the municipality in San Juan County, you guys really are together in this. You guys are in the same boat together. And so making sure that you're collaborating together effectively is going to be really important. And just making sure these are things we haven't already covered. Yeah, this is probably something that you guys want to lean into some of the organizations that you have in the community to help with, but there's a lot of people that do want to get involved and invested in the community. They're sort of wanting more clarity around how do they do that. And so working with folks that are doing, that provide those volunteer opportunities would be great. Another thing you can do on that front is just, it's actually a separate issue. I'll say is, when you guys do engagement, I think hopefully one of the things we tried to do with this process was go pretty big on engagement and go pretty deep. And that by no means should suggest that this is the be all end all of community engagement. But one of the things we hope you guys kind of took from this is, okay, there's some strategies we can use for engagement. You guys have done other things in the past as well, but beginning to really sort of think about the systems and kind of principles you guys want to have for effective engagement. So you have some frameworks there, and you can make sure that when you do things as a community, when you do processes, you have the best chance of not getting yourselves in trouble. Because that just happens in processes, especially when you're talking about difficult issues. There's going to be people that get mad. There's going to be people that, misinformation gets out there. And so thinking about the best practices you can use around engagement that make it so you're you have the best chance of not pissing off too many people and coming out with a good outcome where more or less people feel like they were heard. They feel like the sort of decision-making was clear and they understood how you arrived at different decisions. They feel like they had an opportunity to get involved at different levels. And I say that really to be clear, that isn't a comment on anything you guys have done in the past as much as just hopefully learning from this and other things you guys have done in the past to make sure that processes going forward are pretty effective. I think the other thing is just to continue to support events for locals. I mean, one of the things when we talked about the values part of it, what people love so much is just getting together. People in this community you guys don't always agree, but like you guys like each other. And so people really do love, and everybody talks about the old days when there are these big potlucks and things like that. And just thinking as a town and as a county, what can we do to try to make that easy to do? Try to reduce some of the barriers and support it as much as you can. I'm sure you already do a lot of that, but just raising the bar on that because people love it and they want those opportunities to get together, whether those are small events like the farmers market or larger sort of end of season type, soiree, creating those opportunities for people. So I'll leave the rest of it for now.
Yeah. Cool. Like tomorrow, farmers market. We're going to be there. We're going to have a booth at your farmers market. I'm told that everybody goes to the farmers market. So I hope to see everyone there. We'll be there from 8 to 11. 8, 9, 8.
8 to 8:15.
8 to 11. Yeah. Early morning. Implementation section. So I talked a lot about this at the beginning and how excited I am that this plan has this piece. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I want to walk you through what's in here. I talked about the partners and responsibilities piece. So you'll see in those matrices, all of the partners that are lined up, funding sources and policies, and then progress. So next slide, please. So what we've provided here and in the PDF version of your document that you were emailed, every one of these is a live link, a live hyperlink that will take you to this actual grant. This describes what that grant entails, just real briefly, a sentence or two. There's I don't even know the number. There are dozens in here. There are so many funding opportunities out there right now. And I know you're working with some grant writers and it takes a lot of work to write these grants. But they're out there. I got ahead of myself there. I also mentioned all the primary partners, the town, the county, the school, the chamber, the development association, Region 9, Colorado Brownfields, the master planning committee. Hopefully the master planning committee will continue to be involved in this process and oversee sort of the progress of the plan, and then multiple supporting partners. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned I think that section itself is like 10 pages of just a variety of funding opportunities. So do take a look at those. And of course, we'll help you navigate through those. And then this piece is that measuring progress. So we put a couple different options on here. And again, this takes capacity. Like, do you meet semi-annually? And when we say report, maybe we could change this language in the plan. It doesn't have to be a report. It could just be a semi-annual meeting of a checklist, like we did with the trustee retreat. Here's what we did last year. Here are our goals to do next year. Similar to that. Here's what we did. Here's the efforts we've done toward implementing the master plan this year. We had this goal last year. We didn't make it. Let's try to really focus on that. So this doesn't have to be some massive plan, and it can be a really just simple Excel spreadsheet checklist that you look at every 6 months or every year, just to keep yourselves making sure that you use this. There's a lot of time and effort into this process. We collectively want to make sure that this is successful. And then as far as measuring that progress, I'm not going to go through all the details, but like strategic investments, some of them are kind of obvious. Did we expand our broadband? Did we make improvements to the sewer treatment plant? On strengthening our local economy? And Gloria does this, your staff does this. Look at your sales tax dollars season by season and month by month and see how it's improved based on any kind of changes or making it easier for different types of businesses to open up. Some of them are a little more complicated when you're doing like counts of people, how many people are out in the park. and whatnot, but some of them are pretty straightforward. How many new projects have we built? Any types of compact development or affordable housing? Just keeping track of that so you can actually cross-reference the recommendations and then how you've implemented them.
And we don't know what you guys are going to pick up and grab from this.
Yeah.
We have, so as an organization, we have a monitoring and evaluation system we use. And we began by just figuring this question out, like what are the things we could look at? And then you go through and you say, what's feasible? And there's probably a handful of things you guys can track, probably fewer is better. And using that sort of semi-annual come together and assessment of how we're doing is a really good way to do it. We did a project similar to this in the Gunnison Valley. It was sort of one of the models when we first started talking to you guys, and that's what they do. We still come back. We're still working with them like years later on the sort of next iteration. We're just starting it. 5 years later, let's do this plan again, or the next iteration of it. And one of the things we started with is sort of an assessment of what's worked. So it's a good idea to try to do this in a way that you guys have the capacity for. I'm looking at you, Gloria, because I know it's hard to find the time to do all these things, but it's helpful to, and it's also great for public trust.
Yeah. Last slide. Everybody's like, finally. Next steps. So fun stuff. Tomorrow, we're going to be at the open house. It's been advertised in the newspaper the last couple of weeks. It's been publicized on Facebook, on the town website, on the Compass Project website. So and Gloria promised me, she's like, everybody goes to the farmer's market. So looks like the weather's going to be great. So hopefully we'll have a tent out there and coffee and food for community members to come. We'll have the executive summary as well as copies. We have a few copies of the full master plan, hard copies, so people can look through and provide feedback. For those of you right there, right? For everybody that's watching on at home right now on the computer, come talk to us in the morning. Really appreciate it. And the next bullet is incorrect because Gloria just informed me that the process is going to be, we're going to the Planning Commission first on September 20th. And then we'll come to the town trustees on some later date. 26th.
Thank you.
So that date is correct. And final adoption, right? On the 26th, if all goes well, assuming.
Okay, so it won't be an ordinance, it'll be a resolution.
It'll be a resolution. Yeah. So yeah, it's obviously still, this plan is out there for public comment. Please do. My email address is in there online. Email us, email Gloria, any feedback the community can provide that's watching this and you all.
And you made this comment early on. I mean, this process has been very open and seeking of engagement the whole time. I know you already made this point in the beginning before I was able to get here, but it is also the case that lots and lots of people have helped shape what we have.
Yeah.
And so the type of feedback we're trying to get right now is, how do we make what we have work better? How do we take what's in here? And if there's things that are confusing or things that don't make sense or things that could be done or explained better, it's not a time when, I don't actually want us to have housing as a goal or you got, those.
That's not our vision.
Right. That is
good point.
There's been a lot of
that
opportunity
happens
for people to participate at that level and hopefully everybody had the chance that they wanted to. And we feel very confident that happened. So we don't anticipate any of that. Frankly, we've been getting great positive feedback from people about just, the opportunity to be involved, and probably not everybody loves every single thing that's in there, but by and large, I think people feel like it was fair and they had a chance to get their voice heard. So I just want to provide that again to set expectations appropriately because now's not the time to come with like a Sharpie and just start crossing things out.
And I just want to end with, and we're going to have, a discussion here. We have more time, but it has been an incredible pleasure working in this community, your staff, your trustees, the past trustees, the commissioners, the community, first and foremost. I mean, it's just been awesome.
Yeah.
It's such, not only is it a great place to call work, I got to go hike this morning before this. That's cool, but just an engaged community. Like I've led public meetings in Denver and people screaming at me and It's great. Thank you. It's been a real honor working here. All right, now let's.
Yeah, I guess questions, discussion, feedback, thing like that.
Well, I got some.
Yeah, please.
You on behalf of San Juan County. How are you funded?
We are funded by, so this project was funded by a mix of funds from the Colorado Brownfields Partnership. So that's state funding. We are part of the Colorado Brownfield Partnership. And then the town. And then we were able to attain funding that we had already attained it from the Gates Family Foundation out of Denver, which is a philanthropic organization. They fund our technical assistance work. We called this a technical assistance project, which it was. And those are the sort of 3 layers of funding that funded the project.
You're not attached to DOLA in any way?
No, we do work with DOLA.
Work
This
with them.
this project wasn't funded by DOLA.
No.
Yeah, but we have partnerships with DOLA and do we're working with DOLA on a statewide housing project right now. So, yeah.
DOLA's been very important in Silverton and San Juan County.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you guys have
Yeah.
Patrick, right? Patrick.
And what-
Oh, yeah. He's
I
great.
mean, just,
He's been involved in this process. Yeah.
yeah, Patrick came down for some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you list some of those as possible funding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of DOLA in here. You'll see. Yeah. And there's the monies. They have the money.
Thank you.
they're going to have a new program soon called the Strong Communities Program that is not going to be in there yet because it's not out there yet, but it's going to be, and it's a very good fit for a lot of things we talk about.
Well, you say it's not ready, that means it's not funded yet. Is that what you-
The money's, I think, available, but the state agencies, hopefully I'm not getting out of turn here, but it's not sort of been, I don't think it's publicly out. They haven't put the notice out for funding availability, but it's coming. They're putting the sort of groundwork in place.
I think that's a good presentation. You've made, you've done a lot of work on it. You know, we haven't started any zoning or anything until sixties
Right.
here. So we've got a lot of catch up to do, but we've done well because in the early days, we did grants and whatever.
Mhm.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Is there anything out in the Zoom world or change?
Yeah, any chat?
Recommendation and observation and a question. The commendation is every piece of feedback that I've heard the community provide got incorporated into this. And I think that's pretty amazing. So I commend community builders for figuring out how to do that. The observation that's also super cool is that all those different perspectives created this cohesive document. So all these different perspectives in the community actually are pretty well meshed into the fabric of what this place is, which I just think is awesome. And the question I have is there a mechanism for us to have this be somewhat of a living document as we accomplish goals? How can we continue to iterate it so that it isn't outdated and super successful?
Funny, I was thinking about that on my drive over here. So, because imagine if we had made this plan 3 years ago and we're like, it's going to be a 10-year plan. And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, everything changed, right? So things change. I think that what you want is a 10-year vision. And then reality is, if when you sort of have a 3 to 5 year window of really good execution, and in there, you want to be hitting the targets you can. So the first thing you want to be doing is as I think governing bodies is sort of saying, yeah, these are the priorities. These guys got it right. Or whatever, if we didn't, grab your own priority and start moving those things and try to make as much progress as you can in the next couple of years. And then have these sort of check back meetings once or twice a year where you say, like, what progress are we making? And
Like that idea.
do your best of checking and you're measuring your progress. And as part of that, have a strategic discussion about what's changed. Ask ourselves, look at the goals and strategies and say, what has changed? Because the things that should hold true for you guys, what I think is really nice about this document, the goals and values, those should last you a solid 10 years for sure. right? I don't imagine that in like 8 years, people are going to be like family friendly. I don't think so. You know, I don't think that's going to change, you know, connection to nature, boring, you know, that's not going to change. But what I do think is going to change is, you know, the dynamics around housing, and things are going to change around some of the land use policy work and things like that. So giving yourself the space to work in the actions and strategies, we've tried to create those as tables. We could even give you guys
I was just gonna say, like,
so that you
turn
can
those into
update those,
Excel
have
docs.
them as tools that you can work from. And so that's, you know, that's probably the biggest recommendation I would use is use the strategies and actions tables as sort of work planning, and then every year have a strategic discussion. If we can help you with that, we'll be glad to come back. You can do it as, it doesn't also have to, you know, you can continue the engagement that's been a part of this, make it a big community meeting. And we've had a lot of success with this in a couple of places, in particular in Gunnison, where bring everybody back together, remind people what it was all about, remind them what the priorities were, talk about the progress, and then say, what should we be doing next year? Like, what are the priorities now from a strategic perspective and tactical perspective, not the goals and values, like that's pretty solid. And so doing it from that perspective. So I think that's a good idea or at least it's my idea for how you might do that. I don't think anything to add.
No, I was just saying, like, the geek technical side of me is like, oh yeah, we could make the spreadsheet live, and then you just have that, and you use that, you add columns to it, and use that as your checklist, and you're tracking those indicators that I showed. You put columns in there. Could be a pretty neat tool.
Well, you've been able to work with the town board quite a bit, I think. The county has got not much in this.
But you guys were a part of it.
We need to be. We have shared situations, shared services that we need to work with the town on.
Yeah. I mean, Scott and Austin were pretty heavily involved in several meetings and on committees. So it's,
Yeah, but I think Ernie's point is well taken. I think it's, and Austin, you brought that up too, at one of our action planning meetings of like, you know, I remember you sitting there being like, man, we gotta be working together, town and county, to be able to do these things, whether it's the infrastructure pieces or whatever. So I think that is probably going to be a really important one. It maybe fits to Shane with your point, is having those sort of whatever kind of retreat it might be, where you pull together and say, let's check in on this. If you guys did that jointly and talked about how you can advance some of the strategies in here together, it'd probably be pretty helpful.
You know, one thing in the county we've always talked about is we needed low-income housing here, and that's why we set up. That was primarily through DOLA and some other funding agencies. And we changed that around here and there because the town told the county they would annex that area when it was put in property. And we've done that.
and it's an excellent.
Still wondering where they at.
Yeah, it's a great example. We're actually, the project Clark just mentioned that we're working on statewide. We're using that development as a case study. Like, here's a public-private partnership on how you can make this happen without an actual developer.
I know you guys.
Money went into that project.
Oh, the annexation. Yeah, that's a different.
Brownsfield money.
Yeah.
Any other questions from you all? I mean, this is going to be, hopefully if you guys adopt it, it'll be your tool. So any questions from you guys on its use and applicability, comments?
I just have one comment that I'm incredibly grateful that you all were here when I started, and what a cool way to start your job as an administrator is going through this master planning process and seeing the values of the community come to light while you're starting your job. And then the document that you all came up with is comparable to a city of 200,000 people. And it's here in Silverton, like the quality of it is just incredible. So I just really wanted to thank you all for your time and guiding me through some of the areas that I needed guidance for.
Great working with you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Well, I certainly hope that the county's been very involved. We've got a lot of money invested in Andrew Mountain subdivision. And we hope it proceeds.
Yeah.
If it don't, I need to hear from the town board. Because we've got our future based on that. We got probably $3.5 million stuck down there.
Right.
All of my feedback starts with A. Appreciation. I think it's been a learning process, and just to echo what Gloria says, I think to start, I was like, wait, how do we do all this stuff? So I think the process has been, I've appreciated the process. I think the document itself is authentic and alive. It feels like it's very true to the community. I also noticed that it's applicable in the next 100 pages of our packet tonight. I can see threads on every. How that connects to the master plan. That's how that connects. And I think it also seems attainable. It does have a long-term vision, but I think I appreciate that it's been framed in an attainable way. And lastly, I think a lot of community members have had that moment of, aha, that's how that works. That's what that could look like. That's, you know, I've seen that corner 1,000 times and I've never pictured it that way. Or I think being able to bring aha moments to the community is a way of potentially tamping down some fear and being able to look at positive modifications to what we do that actually is really enhancing to the experience of living in Silverton, which I just came up with my last A. It's amazing.
Awesome. Well, awesome.
Awesome.
Now, who do we work with as a county? If we go from here to you, we go to the town board. I'd like to sit here for a moment with both entities represented. It's not an official meeting, but does the town intend to absorb or annex Engelmann subdivision?
I think there's a question on the table.
If you don't, we need to redo our strategy.
Well, Ernie, we've just purchased some property that will allow us to do that.
I didn't hear you.
We just purchased some property that will allow us to annex.
Yeah, I understand that you've got a part. You could annex without buying it even.
We are trying to do it through the contiguous property line. So we didn't have enough contiguous property line and it would have been considered a flagpole annexation at that point. So this property allows us to create that contiguous line and do a proper annexation.
I think that's great. And I'm glad the town does this for us.
I didn't know that. That's it.
That's great.
Yep.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's exciting.
I just want to say moving to town in the middle of this process was really, really exciting because we got to hear a lot of great feedback from people. And I think as I read through this document and looked at some of the plans from previous times, because this town does seem very good at planning. What was neat to me is the recurring themes. And there were themes from the 2010 master plan. There were themes from all of these recreation and land management plans. I mean, there was a lot of repeated themes about housing, land use, economy, civil engagement. And some people could take that as kind of a downer and cynical as well. These were the same things that we planned 10 years ago, and here we still are. But to me, I took it as this is still true for this community. And this community has this sense of identity that we still want to shape our future. And so what I love about this and having a plan that is so well put together and is very clear on how we can execute it, even though it's a lot there, is that it helps us shape our future. And as we moved here and heard from different people, a theme that I kept hearing was, if we don't shape our future here, someone else is going to do it for us. And there was huge agreement that nobody in the town wanted it to be shaped for them. And so I think it's really exciting to see this come to fruition. And I think we're at this really neat place of synergy where we have this amazing plan, we have great collaboration in town leadership, and we have really excellent sources of funding. And I think that's such a beautiful place to be. this town. And so I think we can all feel really optimistic. And it's neat to see all the same people engaged. I mean, I saw pictures from the Brownsfield discussion. Jim was at the table, Sue was at the table, all the same people were at the table, really sharing the same vision and energy. And so I think it's exciting to see it continue forward. So, and I really appreciate the process you guys have led.
There's some problems that come with that. You have been here 30 years ago almost, when we were doing zoning for minors. Think about it.
They didn't want zoning.
Zoning, of course, son. But they paid.
Are we getting feedback from the community too, or
Typically just in the work session
Cool.
discussed,
just making sure, we want to make sure we're doing our part on that. So.
but that would be up to the mayor if you want to, or to the trustees.
I think it's the whole group, but
Yeah.
we have been doing comments in work sessions lately.
So, yeah,
We do, it's nice to have in person.
It is really nice.
This is really awesome.
Good night.
I have a quick question for the council. I mean, this is a lot to digest, and there's a lot happening in our community that we need to digest also as far as building different things like that. Are you guys feeling overwhelmed at all in trying to implement all this to find the funding? I mean, this is a ton of information, but, and a lot of it is being put on one person. We saw that same with our planner with Lisa Dare. So much was being put, hey, come up with new zoning, you know, but she was expected to do all of her other duties. So how do you help Gloria? How do you guys help yourselves into, this is a great plan, but it's going to take money, it's going to take time and a lot of investment. How do you pull it off?
I'll take a stab at starting the answer. There's no perfect answer. One of the things that I think Clark said is everybody overestimates what they can do in a year and underestimates what they can do in 10 years. And so I think that this represents that in a lot of ways. There's a ton of stuff in here, but it seems like it could be attainable in a decade. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. And then something that I think this whole board has done a really good job of is taking direction from Gloria about, you know, what works and what doesn't. And when she says like, maybe this is too much, we totally support Gloria and the staff in pulling back. And so that's been, you know, taking direction about what capacity actually is.
I mean, Amble Mountain was how many years now? 20? Yeah. I mean, that's how long.
But I moved slow.
But it took so much planning and process, and it's only really come to fruition in the last 5 years. I'd say it took that long to get it to that point. So I like your idea of won't be overwhelmed by a year, you know, be thinking, how much can we get done in 10 years or something?
Well, and I think the good thing, the great ththing about this is we started off with a visioning plan. And, you know, really, what does the community want? What do they want to look like? And then put that into a master plan. And the town's got a planning consultant actually taking, you know, the information from the master plan and putting that into their land use regulations. And it is a little overwhelming. It's a lot overwhelming, no question. But every step you take actually makes life easier because you're not guessing anymore. You're not trying to figure out how this is in here, you know, and why you're doing this, because it's all, you know, in layers, and it's like, so in a lot of ways it, you know, I mean, there's huge things out there that, I mean, housing, you know, trying to tackle housing. I mean, that's, you know, that's just overwhelming if, you know, but it's kind of like how you eat an elephant, you bite at a time. I mean, that's all you can do with some of these small recreation, the same thing. So, you know, the planning, you know, I think that's, you know, the key to your comment, you know, people are worried about, you know, what's going to happen or how can we control it? Well, that's where we're going to get overwhelmed without any control unless we have the documents to keep that in control and build things the way we want to. The other stuff, you know, is going to be a struggle just because of capacity. And we know that. But as long as we at least have some good documents on the book to keep people from just coming in and just rolling over the top of us, then, you know, the community will be able to maintain some level of community that we want.
Yeah.
Because we do fall back on our master plan. We go, what does the master plan say when you're trying to deal with an issue? Go, well, what does the master plan say? And it's there. I mean, the master plan is going to be a little vague and fuzzy, but you still fall back on that, on the values of your community. What does that mean? And that's how you make. We do that too. We'll fall back. What does the master plan say?
A lot of this by the town is done by priority. We can't take on everything, and you know that yourselves. So we do it by priority at this time. But we're becoming more involved with the master plan as we check.
I think what's exciting to see, well, I've heard two narratives in this community. One is a scarcity narrative. We don't have enough resources, we don't have enough staff, we don't have enough capacity. And then I've also heard another narrative, which is we'll find it, we'll do it. This is the vision, we're going towards it. And I think of people in our community, whether it's Beveridge with the Historic Society and this amazing entity she has built and preserved in this community, or Kim White with the school and casting a vision and leading us toward it. I think it's really cool to take some of those lessons and build on them. And so I think what's neat is we have a vision here that I think the community really is behind and finding ways. And we've seen in just the year, little over a year that Gloria's been here, that Beth Kremer has been in her position, we have made huge strides in affordable housing. And then, you know, working towards annexation, things that seemed really intractable, we've made huge progress on. And so I really am thankful for the folks that are involved and supporting and leading, and hopefully we'll continue in those directions. But
sometimes you have to do it by the seat of your pants. I mean, my friend Dan died. He willed the Historical Society $50,000. So we go, okay, let's build a museum.
Yeah.
And that museum ended up costing, I don't know, $1 billion, who knows how much, but it started out as, we just did it. And hope things would happen.
Well, I think what was pointed out at the beginning of the presentation was when you have this documented, when you're looking for grant funding, I mean, so many grants, that's the first question. You know, it's not because I came up with an idea or Gloria came up with an idea she wants to do some crazy thing. It's like the community has decided that. And when you can show that, that helps. It's a huge support. And so it focuses your activity. You know, Gloria can be sitting in her office and one day you'll come in and say, oh, we need to be doing this. And the next day Shane comes in, oh, no, we need to be doing. I think this is what we need to be doing.
Well, it's tough for an administrator like yourself, Gloria. I understand that. And there's a lot of opinions out there.
But this gives us frameworks to harness those opinions and prioritize them. Just like I make the trustees do goals, because that helps me give me a framework for moving forward and kind of getting that feedback. So,
and it's something that can outlast us.
Yeah.
I think is also really important that it carries on to another elected board and into the future and can carry some community knowledge and institutional knowledge along with it.
You know, one thing you guys might consider doing, this is in line with what Shane's sort of evolving living document question is, you know, you guys will be able to see as questions come along, difficult issues, you know, do the values help sort of navigate some of that? They don't make the decisions for you, but you can be like, what is this really about? And somebody can say, you know, hey, we say we want to be a family-friendly community. We say we want to be a place that does these things right here. You know, this feels like, you know, this project feels like it's out of sync with that, or this project seems like it supports those things. You might find as you are ready to sort of find more definition, I feel like we, you know, with every project and with every community, you kind of get as deep as you can with the community. And then you're like, all right, we've hit that point. Like, I don't think we're getting any deeper. Like, there's no more nuance that's going to come out. But that might change with some of these over time. And so another thing you could potentially do down the road, I don't think it would be a big process or anything, but might be an internal conversation around what some of those values actually mean. What are some of the if you're looking at one of the values, this might mean that we do these things, and this might mean that we don't do these things. So that's something to consider doing as well. We'd be happy to help you think about that if you guys want. And we're always happy to come back. So one thing we're going to definitely do is follow your guys' progress, because we're a co-investor in this, and we want to see how you do. We want to see you knock it out of the park in terms of impact and implementation. Because like I said, we track that for us too. So these projects are something we're going to be following up with you guys, see how you do. And we're always happy to come back. And if there's, if we can facilitate a meeting or do anything that helps you move along down the road, just let us know. We know we're not done, so don't make it sound like we're like, all right, bye. But do know that as we finish out our work with you guys. So I know you guys have another meeting. Should we wrap it up, you guys?
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
I'm gonna keep bugging the town board until they either
Annexation.
or don't.
In progress.
So they've been saying that they want the master plan done before they do it, so.
It's 58. Let's take at least a like that break. And so we're gonna let's start the actual town meeting at 7:05.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, welcome everybody. We just wrapped up a joint work session between the town and the county and community builders presenting the draft master plan. And now I call the regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees to order. The time is 7:11 p.m. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis. Trustee Cranker.
Here.
Trustee Harper.
Here.
Trustee Bearma.
Here.
Trustee George. Mayor Pro Tem Barney. Here. Mayor Furman.
Here. All right. This evening, do we have any revisions to tonight's agenda?
One addition to the consent agenda, there's a check in amount of $30,864 for 9318 for the construction of Columbine Park to come out of our lease purchase. And then Trustee George and Trustee Davis both have personal matters that are taking precedent tonight, and they regret they will not be here in attendance.
Thank you. Any other revisions to tonight's agenda? Okay. So at this time, we'll now open up the meeting for public comment. We'll start with in-person comment and then move to Zoom attendee comment. Everyone has 3 minutes, and please just introduce yourself at the beginning of your comment.
Good evening, Deanne Gallegos. I just wanted to say that I'm really excited to see the RFI on there for the wayfinding sign plan at the beginning of town. I've been working on that with town and various groups for about 5-6 years, I think. Those signs are incredibly embarrassing, to be honest. Every time on Visit Silverton, I get tagged at least once a week where I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. So it is low hanging fruit, but what is most exciting is we have come up with like 3 or 4 different plans and trying to figure out how to get something down there, but it's always been a Band-Aid. And so Dana, Gloria and I met last week because we're also working on the other information kiosks, but really to come full circle to honor and respect the plans that we have done before. We always say, putting a plan on the shelf and letting it collect dust. Well, that wayfinding plan really isn't that old, and it was very much vetted. I was a part of that community process as well. And so it's exciting. Like, we just need to know the price tag. Like, what does something like that cost? And it's not a Band-Aid. We're not just going to put up a new quick billboard that's going to be outdated and brands us when our branding is going to be old. It's not just metal panels, which was our last bright idea. I can be honest and say as a part of that, we were like, let's just put up Silverton. It would be really cool to see something move forward that is actually something for us to be proud of. You are entering our town, something that will live hopefully beyond me now that I'm getting super old, and just says Silverton. It's not really, a branding. So philosophy has come full circle. We're back now to respecting a cool old plan. And I just wanted to let you know I was excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Robert Lobato. I work for the Harley Davidson store down here in town. My comment is, when I found out that some of our city, y'all people don't live in town, it really upset me. How can you run a town and make rules for us that live here and not live in our city? That's my biggest comment. I kind of feel that the rest of the town should be able to vote on that, just not get together in a little group and make up your minds that you don't want to live in our town if you're going to be representing us. That's all I have to say.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Misty Anderson. I'm the new library director. Some of you I've met and some of you I haven't, but I just wanted to take an opportunity to say hi, introduce myself. I'm always at the library, so feel free to stop by. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, looks like that's it for in-person comment. We'll move to Zoom comments. And if you're on Zoom, there's a raise hand button you can click to let us know that you'd like to make a comment. All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close this public comment. We will have another public comment period at the end of the meeting. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, that's if we could have Jackie, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium. The first item on our agenda is a proclamation for Jackie for her 31 years of service as the director of the Silverton Library. And the staff put together this really awesome proclamation I'd like to read for everyone. So it says, proclamation honoring Jackie Kerwin on her retirement as library director and continued service to the Silverton Public Library. Whereas the town of Silverton takes pride and pleasure in joining the community in congratulating Jackie Kerwin upon her richly deserved retirement after 31 years of service to the Silverton Public Library. And whereas under her stewardship, Jackie Kerwin has expanded library services, including virtual access, electronic offerings, investing in technology and online resources that provide new formats for gathering knowledge and strengthening services for children, teens, and adults. And whereas the relationships fostered by Jackie Kerwin have resulted in numerous grants, donations, and fundraisers benefiting the Silverton Public Library's growth and sustainability. And whereas Jackie Kerwin baked hundreds of rhubarb pies to help benefit the Friends of the Library fundraising efforts. And whereas our youngest Silverton residents continue to be enthralled by the captivating weekly story times presented by Jackie. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees on behalf of the elected officials, town staff, and the community of the town of Silverton, Colorado, wishing to express their sincere appreciation and immense gratitude for Jackie Kerwin's dedication and commitment to the Silverton Public Library, that we wish her continued health, happiness, and success in the years to come, and gratefully recognize her 31 years of service to the residents of Silverton and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege to have the best job in the world. You make people happy. I'm just very grateful that I had this job and that I live in Silverton. So thank you very much. And I'm glad you got to meet Misty. This is the only way that I could let go. If I didn't have somebody like her, it would be very hard to leave. She's made me just happy. And now I can just go climb mountains and do gardening and watch my boys play sports and still read to the kids. So yeah, thank you I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
And still need one.
I know.
Okay. Nice. All right, so then we will move to our first item of new business for a consideration to use community planning strategies for development readiness assessment.
I gotta promote TJ real quick.
Wearing a lot of hats today.
All right, so I have TJ, President of Community Planning Strategies, here to help walk us through their proposal to facilitate a development readiness assessment. TJ and I have been discussing the best way to move forward with our code rewrite, as well as how to create a clear process for the public to follow, and get a little bonus in updating our development standards. So as I've laid out in the agenda memo, we've been awarded $27,000 from DOLA as a grant, and that is a 50% match with the town. And this is also a unique proposal that I see following under the exemption in our purchasing policy, requiring us to go out for bid. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there too, as we walk through this proposal. TJ, welcome. Oh, and we have Katie too.
Hi. Katie's here too, yes.
Excellent. So they have a copy of the proposal that you had put in our packet. Disappeared. Huh. Can you see us?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. And so they have a copy of what we're just having a technical difficulty. Our TV turned off, so we can't see you, but if you can see and hear us, then that works for now. Can you still hear us? Yes. Okay, wonderful. So basically, we were hoping to combine the code rewrite. Oh, good, we can see you guys again. Hoping to combine the code rewrite with processes for the public to follow, as well as our development standards. And TJ, if you want to walk us through your proposal.
Sure, yeah. Thanks so much, Gloria, and great to meet you all virtually. So by the way, I'm TJ Dulubac. This is Katie Kent. She's been working on some of the development review applications, and we're very excited to be working with the town. And part of what we do are code updates as well, and some education and capacity building. We've also been working closely with community builders for the last maybe a couple of months on transitioning from the comp plan over to code update to try to make that as seamless as possible. And so what through those discussions, what you have in front of you this evening is the outcome of those discussions. That in general, and I won't go through all the details of it, but what we do is what we call a code assessment, where we would go through line by line the code, both the subdivision regulations and the zoning regulations, as well as ancillary regulations that tie to it. So making sure that all of the code sections speak to each other, are consistent, and there aren't the conflicts. What we would do then is in table format, a very easy to use, easy to read document, identify all of those inconsistencies and other areas where maybe the current code is not consistent with current case law, where maybe it's not consistent with planning best practices. And in addition, identify where improvements could be made to make it more consistent with the recently adopted comprehensive plan. So we take all that, put it into a table, and then have an implementation strategy for that based on budget, timeline, and stuff like that. The other component that we're throwing in here, and why we're calling it this development readiness, is we're really looking at how to be ready for some of the larger developments that Gloria has identified coming in from both a procedural standpoint, but also an implementation standpoint. A couple of good examples are that right now there's some conflicts between the road standards and public works manuals with they conflict with the subdivision regulations. And so maybe we can start looking at some of those, make some recommendations. And the other component that we have in here after we do that assessment, we say that through that conversation, and we'll work with Gloria and you all about coming up with a phase one implementation, whatever that highest priority is. We can work through updating the code or the regulations or the standards, whatever that is. What I don't want to do is make an assumption at this time and say this is going to be the highest priority. I like to have that be determined through that assessment process. So once we go through the assessment, have some stakeholder interviews, understand the conflicts, identify them, we can then identify the highest priorities and implement those. So that's, I believe, what we have in front of you this evening for consideration. In a nutshell, of course, there's a lot more conversation that went into it than that, but I'll leave it at there for right now, Gloria. And if any of the trustees have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, thank you very much. What do you guys think?
Great. This is one of my examples earlier when I mentioned to the community builders group where this is a great alignment with the master plan and kind of where they were headed in their presentation. I think this just fits right in. And I think it's a good example of where the master plan and a partnership helps us accomplish some of those goals.
It's one of those to-do list items that you're already working on that you get to put on your list anyways and check. Maybe I just do that, but yeah.
As boring as the code might be at times, this is really exciting. This is one of our top trustee goals, to create predictability and clarity for the town and the community in terms of how we work through our processes. So this is pretty awesome. Excellent. Well, we're code nerds. We love this stuff, so.
Well, and I think what I was excited about this, I've said this over and over from hearing from people going through the process is if we don't have a clear process, it turns out that just people with money and lawyers can make it through the process. And so finding ways to make it so that locals that want to build and people that don't have a lot of money or attorneys can clearly find ways to build units, build housing, do the projects that we want to see happen. So it's exciting to see. I guess the question I had is right now, we're just talking about the $27,000 grant. And then we'll have subsequent conversations about how this leads into larger code.
Correct. So this is the first step in rewriting our code. So after this, then we would look at, and potentially this would be done maybe in February of 2023. And then what we would want to do is go out for another grant because a full code rewrite would be about $100,000 is what we've been quoted. So it could be more, it could be less, but that's kind of what we're shooting for a grant. And there's lots of money out there right now. And CPS has done some grant applications before or helped towns with their grant applications to obtain that money. And they're very successful at it. So I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, and if I might, Gloria, just go a little bit further on that. We have worked with other communities specifically doing code assessment because they didn't know exactly what the issues of their code were and what they wanted to do. They knew they had a little bit of money, knew they needed to update things, but weren't exactly sure. So we've come in, done this code assessment and identified what those were, the needs were, included this assessment report in the grant application and made it even much more successful. All of our conversations with DOLA reps around the state have been that very well received as far as this document in supporting the need for a code update. So that is the goal. Sorry, I should have mentioned that early on. The whole objective here is, yeah, we want to increase some, make some short wins, but the ultimate goal is to have a successful grant application, hopefully in February, submit to DOLA for that application cycle, the Energy Impact Fund for a full code rewrite is the goal.
And so to clarify, this first step is a $3,500 grant from DOLA with a $13,500 grant from DOLA with a $13,500 match from the town.
Correct.
Which is the total of the 27,000.
Correct. And I should note that in last year's budget, I did not budget for the $13,000 this year.
Right, and that's why we're having this.
Right. That's why we're having this discussion. And also because I wasn't aware of that grant parameter at the time, 3 months into the job, but now I am. So it is our match. It's what we've committed to DOLA. And when and how that can be spent, we can work on that. Like if we wanted to throw this into the budget for next year and work on, yes, we can totally work with that.
Yeah, no, this seems great. It seems like it's something that's going to save us money in the long run by making things simpler and easier for everyone to deal with.
Do you have any concerns about spending the $13,500 now based on our current budget?
Not on this.
Okay.
Is it time for a motion?
Unless there's any
Are
other
you-
discussions or comments, I think.
I'm good.
Okay, I'll make a motion to waive the requirements of soliciting bids in accordance with the provisions of the purchasing policy and sign the engagement letter with the community planning strategies to facilitate a development readiness assessment.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. We're looking forward to working with you on the assessment. Likewise. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Have a great night.
Two.
You as well. All right, the next item on our agenda is new business consideration to approve resolution 2022-15 resolution of the town of Silverton to adopt a bulk raw water fee and to amend the fee schedule. And for this item, I'm going to recuse because I intend to purchase bulk raw water from the town in the near future. So Sally and Gloria, if you can co-chair this topic, that would be great.
Okay.
And John Seitz is here to explain this resolution and harness any questions.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So we've been approached by a contractor to purchase a large amount of bulk water for a construction project. And we've had requests for smaller amounts in the past, but we never had it on the fee schedule. So I felt it was time that we add it. Raw water does not cost us an incredibly large amount of resource to produce or to deliver. In this case, we have a faucet on the south side of town. We could also sell bulk water by having contractors pump it directly from the Animas River, where we have a water right there at the 14th Street Bridge. So the way I see this is it's pretty much just, it's not a huge amount of revenue, but it's very little overhead, very little cost to us. So it makes sense to sell one of our resources and bring in a little bit more revenue there.
And do you see like any effects on, I mean, I guess it depends on the amount of water, but do you have any water quantity concerns here?
If it came to that, I would exercise judgment to limit or deny the availability of the water in this format. If we had a bad drought year, then I would just say we can't do it.
Okay.
It's not available. Similar to the bulk outside treated water sales that you guys worked on earlier this year.
Sure.
For my education, can you enlighten me on what typically bulk untreated water is used for?
I was wondering that.
Well, it's in most cases, it's used for dust control.
Mm-hmm. For road and utility maintenance and for construction.
Construction, yeah.
Okay.
And the town uses bulk water to water the streets when things get dry as well.
Yeah.
Or the untreated water. Any more discussion?
I think so.
Okay.
I can make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-15, a resolution of the town of Silverton to adopt a bulk raw water fee and to amend the fee schedule.
I have a process question. We have the quorum with Shane, but we don't have a quorum without Shane.
The way it's written is the majority.
Or just making sure.
So I mean, it's 4 and there's 7. So I would say that you have the majority.
Okay. Let's carry on.
I double checked that earlier.
Okay.
Was so moved.
I'll second it if you don't want it.
Oh, no, go for it, man. That's awesome.
Okay.
All right, trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bearma,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Shane recused.
Don't we let him know?
Okay, the next item on our agenda is new business 4C, consideration to approve an addendum to the existing service agreement with SGM, our town engineering firm.
You could take this one as well. I was approached a few months ago by the town engineer with a request to serve other clients within the town limits. And they wanted to avoid conflict of interest. So we asked them to draw up an addendum for review by our town attorney, Mr. Buckner, which he has reviewed. And this is the advantage to this, if we choose to do it, would be it could save some time, could save some engineering, simply because their engineers would internally review their own work. And you can see where there could also be an issue with that. But this is a large firm. Every engineering review that they've done has been very strict with all the development that we've run by them so far. And I would expect a very strict level of service. If they're going to do development engineering for clients in town, I would still expect that high level of service. But I think essentially the advantage to us would be there's not a lot of back and forth with other engineering firms. And we have several engineering firms working in town right now. I wouldn't really expect that to change that much. But this is a request by the town engineer to the town. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
I think I have a question, but it's more for Clay than for you, John. And the question is, if SGM is on both sides of a project, so representing the town in its analysis of someone who's doing a project in town that they also did the engineering for, how do we, I mean, in that case, is there a structure built in for a second opinion for the town or anything like that, so that we ensure that they're not just rubber stamping their own work without doing a critical analysis?
No, there's nothing in this addendum that does that. Of course, the town always has the authority to go get a second opinion on something like that. Basically, what this addendum is akin to a conflict waiver for an attorney who would represent, two different parties that are, working towards the same goal. And so this is just a very complicated conflict waiver, basically, that says that insofar that a conflict doesn't exist, that the engineer can work for the two parties. But as soon as there is a conflict, that priority of work goes to the town. So I think it'd be pretty clear if and when the two sources or the two intentions diverge. And of course, at that point, if we needed to, we can bring in a second engineer. With a town this small, this wouldn't typically be like a best practice, but with a town this small, I think it would be very effective and would save quite a bit of money. And of course, I think they're going to have separate engineers reviewing plans. And if we did get to a point where we didn't think so, I think we could do whatever we want about it. So, it does sound kind of strange, but I think this is fairly typical. And I don't have a problem with it from like a legal or ethical standpoint. It's just a matter of if you guys are comfortable with it.
I can see how it potentially creates efficiency for the town, and because we have that unique situation, this agreement working as a structure for efficiency, but it does seem a little odd that the town would ever need to be in a situation where we get a second opinion on the work that the town engineer is doing for the town. That's where I think it would be. I don't know.
I think there were two parts.
Am I confused about something?
No, but I think there were two parts of the answer that Clay provided, which is that it could come to pass where they're on both sides. But the second part of what he said made me feel better, which is that there's a sentence in here that says, in the event of a conflict between, who they're representing, they have to represent.
Priority to the town.
Yeah. And so I feel like that avoids any of the like really significant issues that I was concerned about.
I would say that, go ahead, Clay.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, John. one way to also look at this and where, if it comes down to just questioning loyalties, I mean, engineering is a very, it's very complicated, but it's also very black and white. So they're going to do the job based on the engineering requirements because A, they want to keep their firm alive. And B, the town is going to be able to provide way more work than just a single contractor within the town, because the town is constant and consistent work versus, one contractor at a time. So just based on like a basic analysis of where their priorities lie, it makes more sense for them to partner with the town. And I think this is what that does in writing. It says, look, we're not going to let our partnership with the town go away based on, a contractor that might bring up a conflict. We're just going to give priority of work to the town. And so I think there's a lot of kind of checks and balances. I'm not even suggesting in any way that it's, this is somehow unethical or something we should be looking at from that angle. I just know that it enters people's minds as soon as you say the word conflict, which I didn't use first, by the way. That you start going down this road in your head about, well, what about this and what about that? Those things have been thought through, and I think this addendum does a good job capturing that. And I won't keep talking because I think John had something he wanted to say.
Yeah, all I wanted to say was that I don't think there's a great likelihood that we will have a significant conflict of any type here. And if it does, it happens. But I don't think there's a lot of risk. Of course, I'm not the attorney here. But I'm willing to give it a shot because I think that the efficiencies will outweigh any likelihood of risk for the town.
Mm-hmm.
And we, if we try it and it doesn't work, if we have problems right out of the gate or 2 or 3 years from now, whatever the case may be, we can always do something different at any time.
Thank you. That resolved my concerns. Any other thoughts, questions?
I'll make a motion to accept adding the addendum to the existing services agreement with SGM.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Birma,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Clay.
You bet.
All right. Next item on our agenda, new business 4D, request for staff direction on 4th of July fireworks budget.
Sure. So in planning for next year's fireworks, there's been an increase in cost presented in the board packet for the trustees to consider. Our previous line item for fireworks has been $15,000, and the 4th of July Association was expected to raise the remaining $15,000 for just fireworks. And we were also dependent on Silverton, San Juan Fire and Rescue Authority to donate their time to facilitating the firework display. And so what I have in front of you all is their budget, as well as some basic information on the town as far as if we had fireworks one year, what was our sales tax? And if we didn't the next year, if there was much of a difference. So I am asking right now for trustee direction on how to move forward with the fireworks, or how you all would like to evaluate this as a town program. So kind of just think is separating this out just as the fireworks.
Who has thoughts?
So just to get everything straight here, this would be a request to increase what the town has typically budgeted annually, $15,000. To increase that to cover to the total amount, $63,500-ish, which would include the total service of all of the fireworks, because what we haven't been paying for in the past is labor and production, like the things that what we can see in the.
Correct. And Jerry and I met with Molly as well as representative from the 4th of July committee, talking about this new budget. And one of the things that came out of that was that with the new igniter box, is that? Yeah, electronic ignition. With that new, which is very safer, but it does take a lot more time. And that's put a burden on the fire department in that time that it takes to set that up. So while we haven't had an incident of any, concern, it might cost us more to facilitate those in the future.
And so then would this budget would this eliminate the need for the fire department to have to fundraise for the additional cost of fireworks, et cetera?
We don't do the fundraising. That's the 4th of July Association.
So it would eliminate the need for the 4th of July committee to have to fundraise.
Well, now the 4th of July committee could still be involved in fundraising. I mean, in the past, they've done 15,000, kind of like a partnership. So we've done 15, they've done 15, and we ultimately get to that $30,000 for the fireworks.
Okay.
And that's the hard cost for the fireworks. So now this new budget incorporates the personnel costs.
Additional.
Yes.
So just zooming out a little bit, the actual total 4th of July cost of the town would be the 63,500 plus the 15,000 for porta potties. Because right now we spend 30.
Correct.
Really, we don't just spend the 15. So the total budget that we'd be planning for this coming year would be $78,500.
Correct. We would be needing to add, I'm talking about, so I just separated this out as fireworks, but if you're thinking about the day in general, we do budget $15,000 and in addition to all of this for porta potties and sanitation.
Got it.
And so what you need from us tonight is direction from all of us on how to address the difference in the funding.
Correct. So you could tell me to go and research it more, or we do have a deadline coming up is the thing. And so they need to order the fireworks by October 1st. So the way I'm trying to present it is that we look at it as a program, as a town program first, and then evaluate how you all would like me to proceed with this new budget.
We have a better breakdown of the increase in total costs. Was kind of everything more expensive, or was most of the increase in the labor and setup costs? You add to that.
So it should be in the fireworks did go up slightly, but the base like that we haven't had before is the labor.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, the breakdown is on the. Okay.
I kind of wonder if it's worth stepping back for a minute, and you're asking for direction from us, but I kind of feel like I'm also asking direction from the community. Because I think, we heard Jim and Molly and Nathan talk a lot about the struggle to really rally the community to bring about our 4th of July celebrations. I think, my family and I, we were up on the hill, so we really enjoyed the fireworks show. I don't think legally you could get any closer to a fireworks show in the country. And we've seen 4th of July fireworks in Washington, D.C. when we lived there, in New York City. And I have to say this show was world-class, really. And I think that's been a source of pride in this community. And I've heard from a lot of people that, we've had some of the best fireworks in the state or the country over time. And I think it takes a huge amount of effort for the show to be put on, especially before the show. And I've heard a lot of people like, why do we spend so much money on fireworks and it's over in 20 minutes? But recognizing the huge amount of work. We walked up on the hillside afterwards and you could see all the setup and the wiring and everything that was in there. And I can appreciate the fire department saying, hey, like, we have to take off work. This is a huge amount of volunteer time. And we've historically provided it. And we're not sure we want to do that anymore. And I think that's valid. But I also want to kind of ask the community, does it make sense for us to have a world-renowned fireworks show? And maybe we say it does. And I think it's a larger kind of conversation about, can we partner with the chamber? Can we partner with the 4th of July Association? Can we, there's certainly a role for the town to play. And how can we make this something that's a little bit more sustainable as an event in the fireworks? That's kind of, I would like more direction from the community, and kind of what Jim and Molly said to the community of like, hello, we need support. We need help. We can't keep putting all of this on. And I hear from the fire department as well. Hey, we take a lot of great pride in this. This is important to us, but we can't sustain this level of volunteering. And so it, to me, comes back to, what does the community really want? 4th of July needs help. We need help either in donations or hours or partnerships, or, if we look at sponsorships with businesses like Creative District does for Summer Sounds, or are there just creative ways? So I feel like I need more information either from the community to say what they feel like we want to spend our money on and our time and, volunteer for, and maybe more information from staff on what potential funding partnerships could be available. That would be my kind of interest, is could we structure it like some of our other events, and what would be a good partnership for what the town can contribute and how we can kind of share this big event that is great for locals, but also is a draw for our visitors that we're hosting. But that's just that's my soapbox. So community, let us know.
Well, I think that was really well said, Dana. And I mean, it's such a flagship event. Like, it's been such a huge deal in the community for so many years. I think actually seeing a real cost on it is so beneficial, because it just tells us, like, if this is what we want, and then this is what it costs. So I think it's a really useful breakdown. And now we know what we're dealing with. And I think it is a sizable number that's significantly more than what's been in the budget before. But we also have seen like really successful collaborations and partnerships. And so I think making that number known and then looking at it as a community and seeing where the partnerships can come up would help us decide like how to participate on the town level.
Jordan or Jim?
Go for it. I'm curious of the 4th of July. I spent a lot of time.
I know
in
you
that
have so
city.
much context here.
Well, there is a lot of information. There is a lot of context. Most recently, there was a meeting on Friday, the 11th. Is that when it was? Thursday, the 12th? Thursday, the something?
Yep.
That I was not here for because I was traveling. And I know a lot was discussed in that meeting that I was not privy to.
Wait, what meeting?
The meeting, wasn't there a discussion?
4th of July committee or something?
Oh, I wasn't there. Okay.
Nathan was there, yeah, Molly,
yourself.
Jerry.
Oh, yeah, these three. Yeah.
I was not there for that meeting. So I don't know what was discussed. But I know I can speak personally that this is something that when our previous mayor Tukey asked us to step up, we stepped up. This community stepped up big time. And I don't want to see this go away. And I still think personally, this is my personal opinion, that there is wiggle room in this budget. And I know there are some fixed costs in here that we need by a certain time in order to get discounts. Am I incorrect in that statement? Okay. But I know that there is some room in here to play with. And there is still public-private collaboration to be had, and those conversations need to be had as well. So seeing this price tag, and yes, it's pretty high. It blew me away when I first saw it. But I still believe that there is some room to work with us. And if there's any other direct questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them the best I can. That's all I got.
Well, I think it would be great to figure out a way to make it a sustainable, like some kind of sustainable structure, because the 4th of July is very predictable. It comes every year on the 4th of July.
What I can say historically is in 2017, when this whole thing came about with the formation of the 4th of July Association, the town had purchased and implemented a 4th of July celebration that was a little over $73,000. And it did not go very well at all, which is why the Mayor Tukey had asked for a true public-private partnership to come together and brainstorm. And we did. We came up with a great plan, and one that incorporated not only our community, but neighboring communities and brought a true family-friendly element to the 4th of July celebration. And that brings us to today. I mean, there's, and I think you can see in your notes that there are some seasons, some years where we weren't even able to have the 4th of July fireworks due to extenuating circumstances. But we were able to preserve fireworks the best we could and light them off when we were able to. And this year we were able to, right as the expiration date hit. So, was it 3 years, 2.5 years, 3 years? Yeah. So this is, I mean, like I said, I am passionate about this. I don't want to see this go away. I think this is a great event for our town, for our community. And it is a sense of pride, but it's a sense of we're Silverton. Come see us for a bit instead of us going to see other people. And it is at the height of summer. So I would like to continue to work on this, both with the fire department and with staff and with y'all. I don't want to shut the door on this just yet. I don't want to shut the door on it at all. But I do know that that number is pretty staggering at first glance. So,
Jim, from your experience on the committee and just as a business owner, like, do you think, are there ways that we could form a partnership, or what could we build on from the past, you know, thinking about the chamber, or again, thinking about like sponsors, or just different ways to structure it so it's a shared effort. And again, you know, the town is providing more of Nathan's time for event planning. And so just how could this be a true partnership, or what do you think has worked in the past that we could build on, or what?
That's a great question. And for the first few years, we were the sole provider of funding for this project. And we'd go out and we'd find businesses within the region, locally and within the region, that wanted to pitch in and be a part of the effort. I'll be honest, it is difficult having a very small task force.
Yeah.
And it's usually the same people, like you saw in the photograph, same people, the same meetings. And it does get tiresome after a while, but the folks that we did have a part of this, the money that we did have coming in, it was genuine. And it was real money. It wasn't just, you know, a couple $100 here, but although it did help, but the big sponsors were $10,000 each. Those are the big ones we had that covered a lot of the cost. And yeah, I mean, several years have gone by and the true cost of the fireworks have gone up. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. Where we were paying 24 to 27, it's now 34. So.
Well, I think to your point, I guess that's the question I just keep having really to the community, whoever's listening, or I don't know, let's pay attention, is like you said, the task force got fewer. I mean, we've heard you and Molly say, like, folks, if you want this to happen, you have to participate. We can't all do it on our own. The fire department is saying we can't ask these guys to spend this amount of time with no compensation. And so, I don't know, speak up, community.
So like Jim said, the number had some sticker shock, but then when I thought about the breakdown, I do want to acknowledge that it's really only going up $7,000 total.
Yeah.
It's just the town's being asked to shoulder a much larger portion of it. And I want to acknowledge that the fire department
has historically contributed 25,000 plus of value every year so far. But I think my concern I share with you guys as well, that like we saw, like it's the hardest time of year to get volunteers. You guys have really had a hard time having the 4th of July committee get support. It's definitely taxing on the fire department as well, which is why I think we're seeing this budget request instead of them saying, yeah, we're gonna keep volunteering all that time. So I think Dana really nailed it at the beginning, which is that, you know, if the taxpayers in the community want to shoulder the financial responsibility for the event the way it's been going on, and I've been fortunate to hear the history of this event in Silverton and all the pride around it, and the kind of like back and forth with URA and how we totally crushed them.
Every year.
Every year. And so I get it. And I know how important this is to this community. And I think we just need to hear from the community that, you know, it's this important when it comes to their tax dollars too. And it's hard for us to make that call without getting that input. We have 2 meetings before the October deadline. I'm not sure the best way to facilitate that input. But I think it's hard for us to give you direction today to say, like, go figure out how to pay for this without knowing that that's what the community desires first. I don't know. And the other thought was what Jim was saying, is there wiggle room in the budget? Is this the minimum number, or is this the only number? Or is there another number or another way to come about it? I'm just not sure. And then the other question I had is like, how do other communities pay for their fireworks displays? Is this something that's always borne by the municipality?
Yeah.
Or is this something, are there funds out there for, like, you know, pride of history that we can apply for? Like,
Pyrotechnic Enthusiasts International.
yeah.
Well, I had the same question, sort of regionally, like how do communities sustainably and annually look at this item in their budget? And since communities in our region seem to be scaling back on fireworks, just I think my understanding is that that's often related to the fire conditions. Is there room to reach out to other communities and just say, like, if Durango's not, Durango comes to Silverton for the fireworks, and so does Uray, and so does Gunnison, and like all these surrounding communities. I think we are so well known. Like, is there a way to capitalize on our notoriety in a way that helps us fund the notoriety?
We just have buckets at the entrance sign.
That's kind of
We've
interesting.
had buckets. I mean, we've had the
Fire department booth, like, right there.
But I think without needing the boots is my goal. Like, I think that's just not this numbers before us, because those have not been sustainable structures for funding.
In other communities, I have done a little bit of the research in other communities, both state and other states. It's just a line item in the budget that they just have to meet every year.
And is it similar to this?
Percentages.
Like labor and costs? I mean, because fireworks is a fixed cost, right? Or I guess you could say, well, we do half of the mortars than we typically do. Or
It's not a fixed cost because it does fluctuate year to year, correct?
But if it's a community the size of Durango funding, paying $60,000 for fireworks. I mean, our show is a show, it's a big city show in a small population.
So what I'm hearing is I think the only clear directions that we'd like to figure out a way to facilitate community input about what the community would like us to do here. And I think another way to show that input would be to have an overwhelming number of people volunteer for the 4th of July committee. It's a lot easier as well.
I think it's just Molly now.
And I don't want to be a wet blanket, but I do want to say that there are time constraints to this. So as far as like a full citizen engagement at this time is going to be really difficult to pull off with the other things that we have on our plate. So it probably might be best if we were to, solicit public comment at the next meeting via the newspaper. That's kind of a quick way to get people's attention and to get them here. And I'll try and brainstorm some other ways, but we are pretty stacked right now with projects. And the timeline. So I need your direction to prioritize this.
Can we ask JJ and Clark to plug?
Yeah.
Comment at the farmer's market tomorrow while they're meeting with people about master plan.
The 10% discount is eligible until the 1st of October.
That was a deadline to just ensure we'll have the product.
Okay.
That's the discount is given because they're giving that to the fire.
Correct.
It's not a deadline.
The discount doesn't have a deadline, the order has a deadline.
We'll have product.
And we're saying that is October 1, hard deadline.
Yes, correct.
So I think the timeline is a goal to get feedback from the community at or before the next meeting, and then to make a decision at the last meeting in September before the October deadline.
And would it be too much to ask staff to have just like a brainstorm meeting with the chamber, the 4th of July Association / Molly, and staff to just brainstorm, funding ideas, community comments, business community interest? I don't know. Is that?
And yeah, so
wait till we get some input first.
So I was sticker shocked when I saw that too. So I called them right away and was like, let's meet. Because I just wanted to understand it and then potentially brainstorm some ideas, on how we could potentially fund it. But ultimately, I waited for your direction to present anything at this point. And we've been working on the numbers kind of in the background to see how they pencil. And I knew it was going to take a while. So that's we started the process as soon as we got the invoice and then came to you all for trustee direction. To be completely transparent.
Well, and I guess the good part of that, when we had that big meeting month or so ago with Sheriff Conrad and Tyler was there, everyone gave it an A+ for the event. Everyone was on their best behavior. The events went off, the parade, everything was good. So the work and effort that we have as a community have put in making this a true family-friendly event is paying dividends. It has paid off. And turning that marketing, pointing it in certain directions and not in others is paying off for this community. So.
I guess the other request out to the community would be like, is there an organization or people that want to support the 4th of July committee so that the committee could have confidence in taking on the $39,000 kind of shift in the budget so that the town didn't have to. That would make it super simple if like the community collectively came up with a $39,000 solution between now and our next meeting. So we could just be like, cool, we're still going to do the 30K that we always do. Committee's on the other 39, like all good. Like that would be the best case scenario here, but I'll assume that we don't magic $39,000 out of thin air. But anyway, I'm just putting that out into the ethos so that maybe it could happen.
Well, and again, I just trying to think of building on other successful events as well with sponsorships, just thinking what other creative things can we tap into and think of other groups that run events in town and how they help fund it. I know Summer Sounds, the 10,000 we give Summer Sounds does not cover the whole cost of the event. And so what have they done? What have they learned? What have they done that might be useful for funding additionally? So I don't know, are there other groups in town that?
Well, I liked your idea of maybe like combining the region, maybe the other towns don't want to do a firework display and they'd be interested in contributing some, making financial or in-kind.
Out of their line item and just put it.
Yeah, like Durango did a drone show and not fireworks. Maybe they want to send people up here for the fireworks and they want to contribute some dollars to us.
Although we've heard these drone shows are starting to be way more expensive than fireworks even are, so.
And they're nowhere near as fun.
They're not as cool.
Yeah, not as cool.
What else can we help with? Is that too much?
And no, that's manageable. And especially if we move the final decision to the 26th, that gives us some time to do some research on funding, meeting with the stakeholders on that, and then also kind of pushing out for public comment. And then that also falls after our open town hall that I hope to have on
Oh, right.
September 12th, I want to say. Let me just double check. That was
the 14th.
I think it's the
Was it
14th. That would be great to put that.
Yeah, so
It'd be 2 days after the.
yeah, so it'd be September 14th, 2 days after the trustee meeting. But if we could put a poll in there, I think that would be an easy way to kind of gauge where the community is at, and then that information could be presented to you as well as the funding options on the 26th.
Does that timeline work for you guys?
Just October.
Okay.
Do you have to put deposit down, Kat? Like, is it just spoken for?
The full payment.
It's full payment.
Full payment. Great.
Okay.
Does that sound like the direction you guys were going towards? Cool, great. Thank you.
Thanks for being here to answer questions.
Yeah.
Terry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
And for your 1,000 hours.
We weren't all mine.
Well, I know.
You know, and I talked to Jim earlier a little bit about this, part of it's a good thing, the bad thing. We have a ton of experience on the fire department. But with that ton of experience comes age. So we are really relying on a lot of these younger guys to some of the heavy lifting to come and donate those hours. And Jim knows from experience, he loses his crew for about 4 days at the port. They're just gone. You know, a lot of those younger guys don't have that option. You know, they can't just, they don't have PTO hours, they don't run their own business, whatever. So if they donate those hours, they've lost. Or they're just not able to do it, then we're short. So that's part of this. It's just to get volunteers for that kind of hours.
I think we have a sign-up sheet at the town hall.
For donations?
All of it, hours, people, bodies, donations. One of our values was where people can make a difference. So
Good.
here you go, sign up. I'm good to go.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right. New business 4E, request to draft an RFI to begin implementation of wayfinding master plans, entrance signs.
All right, take two. Tried this last year. I learned a lot. I'm coming back. So the topic of entrance signs has come up over the last year that I have been here, from citizen comments to the Compass Project events, to chamber board meetings, and there's interest in updating our entrance signs. That's a fact. Taking the two design concepts from the 2017 Wayfinding Master Plan, I'm proposing that we draft a request for interest to solicit artists and determine the cost and scope of updating the entrance signs. My ask of you all tonight is to pick one of the two concepts in the 2017 Wayfinding Master Plan. And why I use this was because these two concepts have already been vetted by the community. And then once we have proposals back with that from that RFI, we can have a better idea of how to fund it. And we have some ideas with the tourism board, chamber, and then there are a lot of state grant opportunities right now to potentially jump on. So this is take two.
Well, I presented these designs to my two children to see what they would prefer. And one preferred one and the other one preferred the other one.
I'd like to make a pitch from my personal opinion. I think the second one is like very generic, like mountain town, whatever. It's a nice sign, but like I could see that being in Mountain Village Telluride. I could see it being in Salida. Like it's just pretty generic. Whereas the first one, maybe not exactly as it is, looks like our mining tramways, which we have a number of. And I think that we should just own that as part of our identity because they're super cool and unique. And that some, my understanding of this RFI is they're going to use this as like an inspirational image, but not necessarily the design parameter.
Fine.
So my personal opinion would be to choose this one and to ask them to use that as the inspiration image.
Sorry, I should have clarified that. Yes, conceptual design.
But if you guys all like the second one better, that's cool too.
I have the original packet for this. I sat on this little committee.
Back at the meeting.
Yep. Many, many moons ago. I personally liked option one, the conceptual, because not only did it embrace the historic aspect, it beamed when in comparison with our mountain range. The red coming off the mountains off this sign was so cool. And we walked out and did like pulling up comparisons. It was great.
Ooh.
I liked number one, and my vote is still for number one. Because it really does embrace where we are. This is it. We're Silverton.
One other quick thing. I think this is something also that we should get community input on, but we already had community input on these two designs. My request would be that when we do get, if we decide to move forward with the RFI and we get, I'm assuming we're gonna get multiple options of different versions of this conceptual idea, that those options get voted on by the community and that we don't make the ultimate decision of what the sign looks like.
I just do not want to open up a new rebranding Silverton package. Just as long as we're keeping it simple. That would be my request, because if we go down that rabbit hole, we will all go in 20,000 different directions. Conceptual and not opening up cans of worms. And so as we think about the draft RFI, that we're thinking very Silverton, it's great. There's not a lot we can argue about naming a sign Silverton at the entrance to Silverton.
That was my only comment, would be to have it just say Silverton instead of adding the words below it, but I also prefer the first design personally, but again, my daughters had differing opinions on this. I imagine there are differing opinions in the community, but the cable is really, I'm really into the cable on that one. And Jim, your comment about it sort of illuminating that entrance, I think, in the contrast between its background and
really
itself, cool. I think sounds really, that was a compelling argument to me.
Yeah.
You like the second one, don't you?
No, I like both of them.
Just kidding.
I was only torn based on placement. I could see one looking better over the other depending on where it was placed and its surrounding it's placed in. But yeah, thinking about the beginning of town, though, I think one, especially the dimensions along with I'm also a big fan of the cables too. Will just really pop and look nice.
I like number one. Yeah. My name
is strong. So as the conceptual design, we would use for one in an RFI if you were pricing an RFI. Okay.
And I really suspect, at least from the earfuls that I've gotten, that folks would just be thrilled. They'd just be thrilled that it got up.
And that it wasn't
one or two. And so my hope in bringing up this discussion or contributing to this discussion is that we could not get weighed down in more community input and discussion and move into execution, because that is a strong message I've heard from lots of people.
Shovel ready.
I guess then I withdraw part of my request that it gets vetted. But I'd say, let's see what they bring back if we approve this RFI. And if there's like a major difference from one to the other, then maybe that goes back out. But if it's more just about like budget and size and things like that, then.
Well, and I think the idea of executing portions of planning, we were alluding to this conversation earlier about like all the planning and none of the execution. This would be a really nice, I don't want to say win, but it would be a nice ode to why we plan.
And to your point, we can do it in stages. I mean, the wayfinding plan was still set there. It can still carry the same design concepts moving forward. The work's still done and it's still relevant. It doesn't become irrelevant if you move forward with the design concept. Yeah.
Cool. Someone like to make a motion?
We just have to drive smaller cars to get underneath it. It's all just, I'm teasing. That's a joke. Get it.
Don't knock it down right off the bat, Jen.
Okay, I'll make a motion to choose option 1 of the renderings presented to release an RFI for the construction of the entrance signs.
A second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Cranker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Birma.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. And we're just like knocking out these goals in the master plan. Rushing. And we got like 3 or 4 of the big ones already like well underway.
I know, that was where my comment earlier came in, is that throughout the rest of the packet, we'll see.
I mean,
And when I say we, I mean Gloria.
Staff, all the public left when we're actually doing all the work. I mean, the master plan's great, but we're actually,
Well, except these guys are hanging in. This is hanging tough.
you guys get cookies or pizza?
Evan, this one, this next one.
Direction, that would be helpful.
That is very clear. Thank you.
Okay. New business 4F, consideration to conduct the first reading for adoption of ordinance 2022-10, an ordinance of the town of Silverton, Colorado, adopting by reference and enacting the 2015 editions of the International Building Code, International Residential Code, International Energy Conservation Code, International Mechanical Code, International Fuel Gas Code, International Fire Code, and the International Existing Building Code, and repealing all other ordinances or parts of laws in conflict therewith.
I feel like the title is going to take longer to explain. It's going to take longer to read than explain. So the town is currently operating under the 2006 International Building Code and subsequent codes listed underneath. The ordinance before you is an update to our building code and the subsequent codes from 2006, 2015, with only one real exception and deletion, which is the residential sprinkler requirements, which are currently not in the 2006 code, but we would ask that it be redacted from our adoption of this code. As it states in your agenda memo, this update would position the town in line with neighboring communities, including Uray, Telluride, and Durango. And then Bevan is here as well to answer any questions.
Kevin was here.
Yep, he's hiding.
So I'm very much in support of this. My one question is for people who might have already made a huge amount of investment in some plans. Will there be a grace period? So one citizen walked up to me that actually is preemptively updating their plans. They plan to submit to the Planning Commission to be in line with the 2015 code, but it's taken them quite a bit of work. But for anyone who's not quite as proactive as that person, if someone already is in process, is there a grace period where we allow them to like go through the process for the next, I don't know, 60 or 90 days under the old code, or is this like hard and fast the day it's adopted?
And so this would just be the first reading.
Sure.
So hopefully that anticipation of the new one would go into play, but I'm not sure if a grace period is something that we've done before. I don't know.
Like if someone had construction plans drawn up over the last like 6 months that they were going to submit in 60 days or something, that could be quite a big additional surprising expense to ask them to go back. Or maybe it's not, I don't really know, but.
Yeah, I think in most cases, not going to be a huge cost. I think the cost could be in terms of having to alter the plans, but I'm open to talking about it and discussing with Bill and the board. I think if you could prove that you started those plans and within a specific time frame, then we could consider allowing it. Most of these improvements are going to benefit the structure and the homeowner. And some of it we may be able to update at a later date. It just depends upon the specifics and the design.
Cool. Okay, in that case, I would just say like if an issue arises, to let us know rather than, or my recommendation would be to let us know rather than just being like, nope, it's not conforming, so that we could, evaluate that and it doesn't have to be put on you to make a mean call.
And Clay, I saw you had unmuted for a second. Did you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Mayor Furman said, and that is the way you would handle this is that if somebody comes forward with plans and it looks like it's going to be a major, kind of unfair and undue monetary issue for that person that would be kind of unfairly affected by the law change compared to those who had started engineering plans after the law took effect, then that's something that you guys could address as a board and grant variances, et cetera. We already have things in place in our code for somebody to come to you and you don't be the ultimate decision maker for something, so that there's not something where we're causing some undue hardship on a citizen. And so just always be aware of that yes, there are the regulations that we follow, but yes, there are circumstances where we use those variance laws to allow them to construct something that's still safe and meets health and safety requirements, but maybe didn't check the right box on a new building code. And that's why I want you also to know, which brings up my point, that this is also this is the beginning, and this is going to be kind of a breathing document, because as we go through and implement and go to enforce some of these things, these codes are massive. I mean, this is what we're adopting here is voluminous. We're talking tens of thousands of pages of addendums and appendices, and it's just crazy. So there's no way we could go through everything and make sure and deal with every little piece of the law. So when stuff comes up, just be ready that you'll be dealing with something in the building code, a couple times a year, and that's just how it goes until you kind of get it. And it takes years and years of heavy development before you kind of hash out and get it to exactly where it fits with your community. And so don't think we're setting anything in stone. This is all stuff that we can, there's processes for, making sure that everybody's happy and that, we all have, safe buildings for our community.
Great. I bet when you're memorizing this whole thing.
As an example, we backed out the 2015 code for sprinkler systems in 1 and 2 family homes. It does apply for 3 family and larger, but we have resolutions to keep the life and safety intact by making by upping the fire rating in the wall. So there are ways about it, but we felt like it was too costly in this case for a single family or a 2-family dwelling to be burdened with that cost. So we have other resolutions. It's all focused on health and safety and making better homes and keeping people safe and well. And so we keep that in mind, and we maintain that with the community will get more support.
Do we know about the economic impacts of implementing this? I know it has to be done. But already a difficult situation with costs, we're about to make it even more. To build a single family home, to build a duplex. We're doing all this stuff by implementing all this. How is this going to impact our local builders?
Yeah, well, let me talk to that real quick, and then whoever wants to jump in on it. There's no, what I think needs to be clear for the board and the community is that the House bill that is passed and is very controversial, and there are a lot of lobbying. There's a lot of lobbying taking place to kind of undo some of the more strict requirements of that House bill. But first, we don't have a choice. We have to adopt one of the last, basically last 3 iterations of the code. And so 2015 not a ton change between 15 and 18, but 2015 building code, the energy conservation portion of that is, by the time it gets to 2021, is so cost prohibitive for rural communities that it's almost impossible. It would be impossible to build anything, right? And so this is kind of picking the lesser of three evils, and wherever we can, you know, I think we can insert as much discretion as we can to limit cost impacts. For example, the first one that the town staff picked up on, and one thing that we're you know, basically it's not one of the statutory requirements. We're at liberty, at least as far as I know and have researched, that we're getting rid of the sprinkler systems.
Yep.
No, we can't do that. And so little things like that, as they pop up, we can research what parts we can and can't amend or delete. But I think the real answer is yes. There's no way to look at, you know, no way for anybody to argue this is not going to have fiscal impacts, because it does make buildings, the building code is going to be a little stricter, which means it's going to cost a little more. That's just how it always works, right? And so we can't tell our community, no, this isn't going to affect you. No, this isn't going to have fiscal impacts. It is. But what I think the, you know, unified voice should be is that we had to, and this is the best we can do. And you know, until that law is either repealed or amended, to give municipalities, especially rural municipalities and counties, more discretion in what they have to adopt and what they can amend and repeal and delete, it's going to be a battle, because this is not one that people are taking very lightly. The Colorado Municipal League is almost unanimously against this requirement and what it means for our towns in Colorado. And so I'm not making promises. I just don't see the current structure of this surviving very much longer. But that said, we have to deal with it now. And if things don't go the way that we're hoping they go, we will, if we don't do this now, we will have to adopt the 2021 later. And so this buys us time to undo some of the hardships that are in this. And, you know, it sucks. There's no other way around. And that's my best legal opinion for you right there.
I know, and Clay, that's good, because with some of our neighbors to the south and working with some of the organizations down there, I recognize what the impact was on our folks down there, on our friends and neighbors down south, and how that would affect us here locally, which is why I just made the statement.
No, it's good. And I think
already seen the impact, how it impacts people. So anyway, it's good to see you, Bill.
I wonder if I might comment a couple comments that came to my mind while you guys were all speaking, if that's okay.
Of course.
Clay has certainly spoke very competently on the problem, but I possibly didn't make one thing clear. The 2015 is not an incredibly huge leap from the 2006 code, but yes, it will cost more money. We backed out the most expensive addition that I was aware of, which is the sprinkling system, which has been done also by our neighbors. But what Clayton didn't, I think, really say that, and I apologize, Clayton, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. What they're thinking of trying to do is to force us to go all the way to the 2021 code, which is devastating. And that's the code, and the 2018 and the 2021 that they're talking about really putting up arms against. No one is saying that 2015 is particularly bad as it's packaged. And moving on with this code, as he spoke, does give us some time and some breathing room to let the legislative process work, and also gives us a little bit of safety margin for our citizens. I spent a lot of time reviewing this stuff. Yes, there'll be a higher cost, but it isn't some number that leaps out. It's not 15 or 20%. It's more in the neighborhood of a 5 to 8% overall increase. And I think that is probably offset by the energy savings and some other safety issues that are involved in it. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions or discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
It's just a really long motion. Someone has to read it.
All right, I'll go for it. Make a motion to conduct the first reading for the adoption of ordinance 2022-10, an ordinance of the town of Silverton, Colorado, adopting by reference and enacting the 2015 editions of the International Building Code, International Residential Code, International Energy Conservation Code, International Mechanical Code, International Fuel Gas Code, International Fire Code, and the International Existing Building Code, and repealing all other ordinances or parts of laws in conflict therein. Therewith.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Birma,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda items with revisions noted by Gloria at the beginning of the meeting. Which does excitingly include the Zanoni land purchase press release, which if anyone didn't see the newspaper or tune into the last meeting, the town recently purchased some land over by Anvil that will be utilized for affordable housing.
Checking off those goals again.
Does anyone have any questions or feedback on the consent agenda before the motion is presented?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Birma,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. All right. Staff reports.
Well, we have a new Silvertonian in our midst, Matt, our clerk. They just birthed Isla. I don't know how to say this, like they birthed her. I don't know, that's not how you say it. She was born today. Isla Sophia Green was born today at noon. A very healthy young little girl that will be coming back up to Silverton and increasing our population.
And not an
Oh,
wait, what's her weight?
5.8.
Little peanuts.
Yeah.
So Matt will be on parental leave for the next couple of weeks. And Melina and I will be helping fill in where we can. Actually, all of us will be, the whole staff, but because he is a cornerstone to everything that we do. So we've been working on this for a while. He's been working on getting ready for the new baby.
takes almost as much time to go on parental leave as it does to.
Right, yeah, he was definitely prepping for all of this. I do have a call into our auditor. Since we did do our extension, I haven't heard back from them since last week. So I don't have an update on you from when that's going to be finished, but they have finished collecting information from us. And so now we are just waiting for them to compile and give us our report. And then I would like to request an executive session at the end of the September 12th meeting to conduct my annual review. At the Personnel and Ordinance Committee, it was agreed upon that we would ask Clayton to be collecting and compiling the trustees' individual reviews, and you will get that email shortly.
Let's do it. Great.
Schedule it out. And I'm happy to harness any other questions you might have on the staff reports. And I wanted to point out that sometimes you'll notice that you'll get a staff report one week and you won't get it the next week. I have said that it's okay for our town staff to do it once a month, as long as we track it once a month, but it did become burdensome for a while for some of them. So we went down to once a month. I hope that's okay. Okay, great.
It was exciting to think about our test well being drilled. I've been in there a while.
And the footers at the Columbine Park bathrooms report.
Yes.
Awesome. As always, staff is crushing it. Next item on our agenda is committee reports. First one is the finance committee.
There was a finance committee meeting on, was it Monday, the 15th?
Probably.
I was not available for that meeting. I was traveling that day on my way back, so I did not attend. But a few other trustees did.
Yep. You're tossing it to me. Is that what you're doing?
Hot potato, hot potato.
Yep, we had a finance committee report. We looked at the sales tax numbers. As part of that, I think a key thing that we as trustees all pay attention to is that our sales tax numbers are up from what we compared them to in 2019. So I think just kind of referencing for whoever in the community is still listening. When we did our town budget, we planned for a conservative 10% decrease from 2019 numbers, because we said, well, 2020 is the COVID pandemic, things were shut down. 2021 was crazy bonkers bananas post-COVID pandemic. So to budget more accurately or have a better year of comparison, we were looking at 2019 numbers. And so compared to those numbers, the town sales tax health is good. We recognize that doesn't reflect the health of all businesses in town, but I think that was a good indicator as we're partway through the summer and getting summer numbers reported that the town sales tax economy remains within what we budgeted and above. We also talked about certifying delinquent accounts for water, sewer, and trash. So we didn't really have a great process in the past for folks that may be delinquent on their utilities accounts. And so we would partner with the county and they would kind of serve as the collector for that. Tyler and I both wanted to make sure in talking with Matt and Gloria that there was plenty of feedback to anybody that had a delinquent account, right? That we're not just like sending someone to collections really quickly. And there was a lot of assurance that, you know, if we get any notification from someone, if we can reach them, we will try to work with them to do payments, to do installments, to do whatever they need to help them make that utility bill manageable. But most of this is related to folks that we just can't get a hold of or get in touch with. So we talked about that and implementing it for folks that are like 10 months behind. So we're talking about a good chunk of time that we haven't been able to hear from anybody.
So we will draft that policy and it will come before the board for you all to review.
Yeah.
Matt and I also decided that it would be in July, so about 6 months that we would send out the first notification, like, hey, you're starting to fall behind. If you reach this 10-month mark, then we have to send your account to the county.
Thanks, Lena. Gloria gave us an update about potentially being able to see local versus remote sales tax numbers. It proves that is quite challenging because in the systems where we collect it, Amazon is listed as a local retailer. So that data isn't super helpful to us if Amazon is a local retailer. So stay tuned. There was also some talk about some of our coding in our general ledger and some funding that we have. Gloria gave us an update on the town hall open house and how we would do that for budgeting and community engagement. And we talked a little bit about issues with our actuals reporting. So Matt and Gloria are diving into the weeds here to get us all straightened out and all of our accounts in order. So we appreciate that. Any questions? Update. If I don't write it down, I won't remember it.
All right. And we also had an ordinance and personnel committee meeting and covered a lot of stuff. The first one is something that a handful of citizens have brought to town's attention and members of the board's attention, which is concerns about voter registrations in Silverton and how, you know, they can raise concerns or request an audit, who's responsible for maintaining voter registration records and things like that. And so Gloria had worked with Clayton to have a memo prepared describing all of the responses to those questions. That was presented to the committee. And I would request at this meeting that memo be added to our packet for the next meeting. That committee meeting happened before or after this packet went out, so we weren't able to include it this week. But I think that's a helpful memo that includes information about who's responsible for maintaining voter records and auditing them and things like that. We also talked about Gloria's process for conducting staff reviews, and then also our process for conducting the administrator review. And we've now scheduled that for the next meeting. And then you're already conducting the staff reviews.
Yes.
We also talked about the municipal code rewrite process, which we voted on this evening. There was a request from the sheriff's department to provide permission to use like wheel locks, like boots. But we didn't have enough context at that meeting to fully understand it, but the sheriff's department submitted a memo shortly following the meeting saying that the intention was to use those on OHVs parked in town illegally. And the clarification I would ask is that really just for OHVs or is for any illegally parked vehicles? Seems like a pretty easy decision for us to make. It's just for OHVs that are parked in town. Then we had a discussion about having a code enforcement officer position independent of Bill and Bevan's position, so they can focus on all of the like building code development applications and processes like that, and not have to worry so much about going out and policing things.
Dog poop and leashes and.
Yeah. Or any traffic violations or anything like that. So there's many different aspects of that process and discussion that are complicated. And so we were just trying to break it down into its component parts, and we'll, I think, be getting more information at some point in the future, but it's a pretty long-term discussion, and it includes coordination with the county and the sheriff's department to see what they would like us to do and what they would support before any decisions are presented formally to the board. Or not decisions, but suggestions. And then finally, we reviewed a request to adopt a puppy mill ordinance as a follow-up to the public comment that was made a few meetings ago. And while we all agreed that that is an important issue, it isn't terribly relevant to our community at this time. And even though it's being presented as a preemptive request so that we can't have a puppy mill here in the future, we said, let's put that on the somewhere to-do list, but it definitely isn't a priority that supersedes a lot of the other stuff that the staff is working on. So if at some point they're all super bored, that's unfair to say. If at some point the schedule permits, that's something that we would work on, but not ahead of a lot of the urgent stuff that we have going on right now.
It's a very thorough report.
Another great update.
I do have a quick question though. Seeing what Sheriff Conrad turned in, he already purchased them and he was asking for reimbursement. Is that what this is?
He was asking if he could use them.
Oh. So they're just purchased and hanging out.
I don't know if he's purchased them. He just sent me the picture of them. So I'm not sure if they've been purchased or.
Purchased 2 trailer locks.
Okay.
So he wants to purchase more and utilize them. I didn't realize our OHV was that prevalent still throughout town, that people are still driving around and parking vehicles everywhere. No? Yes?
I don't know.
You don't know?
It would be something. I'm usually locked in the office.
So am I.
I'll be honest.
I just didn't know.
I've gotten maybe between 15 and 20 tickets for OHVs in town.
Really? Wow.
So is that I think when we ended the meeting, we asked for further context from the sheriff. And then we got the memo. At least members of that committee did. And so is that the final word, or we'll be able to circle back with the sheriff to have more clarification.
Yeah, we can absolutely. Yeah, and it hasn't
That would be
presented to the board, but when I talked to Clayton about it, he explained that it would be impounding in place. So you'd have to develop a policy for it on how you are going to administer it, what it would take to get them off. So kind of the whole program behind impounding in place.
And that's a whole lot more work for the sheriff.
Well, the sheriff, can I jump in here, Gloria, real quick? I didn't mean to
Absolutely.
interrupt you. There's two things. We'll circle back to the animals. But the boots are, I'm researching the boot issue. There are other municipalities and cities that use boots. It's not necessarily disallowed by state regulation or policy, but there's a host of problems that come with it. And this isn't the time or place to have that conversation. I'm just letting you, I'm looking into it. We could do it. There's other things I think we could do before you boot. My assumption, having not talked to the sheriff about it, but just from the question alone, is that he's concerned with writing tickets because of the nature of the OHV and not being a highway registered vehicle. But I think I think we have a lot of different ways we could go with this. And I'm going to work directly with town staff and the sheriff to come to an answer that makes everybody happy. Because he wants to do it for some reason. I just don't know what that reason is. And it's not disallowed, but I think there needs to be, we definitely would need to have a policy in place. And I'm already down the road looking at what that ordinance might look like to change the code. In the same light, talking about our code, just for that person out there, Mayor Furman, and because it is important, I think, to everybody that we care for animals that we have responsibility for. We already have a treatment of animals section in our code that includes cruelty to animals and some other things. And I think, although it doesn't specifically talk about puppy mills, I think puppy mills by common definition has this connotation that there's these things going on within a puppy mill that doesn't make it like a certified breeder or otherwise takes good care of the animal. So I'm working under that assumed definition, and under that assumed definition of puppy mill, we would be able to charge somebody criminally under our current code for cruelty to animals, starvation, or abandonment of animals. And so I just so you're aware, and that would really be easy to tweak that language as well to add certain aspects of kind of what the puppy mill connotation really means, and make sure that some of that language would be in our code. And so if you wanted me to bring that back to the board, that's a really easy, quick ordinance just to amend the current code, to add some language. So you wouldn't have to table it and, bring it back up and have a committee about, we could just kind of get it done if you so chose. Those are my two things.
I would say that materially changes the discussion that we had, because the reason that we kind of decreased the priority of that request was that they presented a pretty long ordinance that it was our understanding would require a significant amount of research before adoption. And we didn't want to incur that staff and legal time to do that. But for what you're proposing, I think
Diminutive amount was the word. Then we would.
Minimus.
The
De minimis.
It was a big 10-cent word.
It's a new word to me, so I was trying to get it up there, but I think that's in line with what the direction you gave. If it's not going to take a lot, that we can move forward, and it sounds like Clay has a way for us to do that.
For sure. DE.
Oh, DE.
Space minimus. Flat.
So there we go.
Are we able to give direction to this discussion to have Clay do that, since it?
The committee update.
quick, or do we,
I think.
any objections to that
you can
direction?
That direction anytime you want.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for adding that context for us, Clay. So that's different than what we had anticipated. Anything else on committee reports? Okay, trustee reports. Oh, should we, I guess committee report, like we just had the meeting, but would a committee report be just
Our work session.
our work session that we just had? No, yeah. Trustee report.
Summarize it for the people that are still listening.
I think
Go
you
for
got it.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, Dana, you're not gonna.
All right. Well, for those who are still listening or who didn't join the work session, we had a joint meeting with the town and the county where we got to hear a presentation of the master plan that we all worked on from our community builders partners. And they provided a brief overview. So I encourage anyone who's interested to go listen to that recording. It was from 5 to 7. And a really good chance for the county and town leaders to be in the same room and hear the same information that has come from the master planning process. If you're still out there, you can show up at the farmer's market tomorrow between 8 and 11, and community builders will be there with drafts of the plan and happy to chat about it. So it's exciting. Stay tuned for more ways to hear about what's happening with it. That's my infomercial.
And I was saying, not only have we made it a priority, but we are working very quickly towards annexing Anvil, which did come up a couple.
Quite a lot.
Yeah.
Quite a lot.
Cool. Any other trustee reports?
Oh, I do have a trustee report. I'm sorry, I'm
Okay.
talking so much, but I had the privilege because I had one day where my in-laws had the kids and I got to go on a ride along with Officer John Jacobs, which was a huge treat.
Oh,
So I encourage anybody in the county and town in leadership that would like to do it. It was a really great opportunity to, one, spend the day with someone who has decades of experience in this community. And in his words, he and his wife moved from this community and had no burned bridges, which I think is a nice way to be a part of this community and also exit it. And really just excellent individual, shares a lot of feedback, but just has a really great perspective on life and shared a lot about the backcountry. So it was really enlightening for me. Obviously, the town jurisdiction is not in the backcountry, but I just think knowing what our users are experiencing, what our land is experiencing was really helpful. And it's such a great resource that we have the Alpine Ranger program with him out there. And I would say in general, people were really appreciative of him being out there. And to anybody out there, if you were doing dumb things with kids in OHVs, Officer Jacobs will not look kindly on that. So don't do dumb things with children in OHVs and you'll be fine. And stay the trail.
Can any citizen opt in for
You
a
could
ride along?
actually, yeah. I mean, if you check in with.
Right in the
Sheriff
back any
Conrad,
day you want.
And then, so just to put that out there. Sheriff Conrad is happy. Oh, you just couldn't resist that, could you?
Can resist.
I think the sheriff's department, they are happy for any trustees or county folks or citizens to potentially do ride-alongs if it doesn't impede the line of duty. And the backcountry ranger program, John Jacobs will be out there through end of September. So, yeah.
Did you hear it? Heard it.
All right.
It's beautiful.
Should have highlighted this in the staff reports, but the new chip and the new soccer goals in the park look awesome. Work great.
Nice. All right, moving on to continued business, 9A and 9B probably will get a similar briefing, but 9A is consideration to rescind and deny the second reading of ordinance 2022-08, ordinance of the town of Silverton for a limited rezoning and amending the official zoning map regarding property known as 124 East 9th Street, Silverton, Colorado, to be followed by the next item on the agenda, which which I guess I'll just go ahead and say, which is consideration to conduct the first reading for adoption of ordinance 2022-09, ordinance of the town of Silverton for limited rezoning and amending the official zoning map regarding property known as 124 East 9th Street, Silverton, Colorado. So we're replacing the ordinance that we looked at the last meeting with a new ordinance to accomplish what we intended to accomplish when we voted at the public hearing 2 meetings ago.
Correct. Correct. And in Clayton.
Respect to Wayne Barger's proposed development of his property.
I know you guys were just begging for us to have more discussion on the business pedestrian limited overlay district. I'm going to do this the short way and then you ask any questions. I'm going to talk about it all at once. The previous conversation, and I'll take most of the responsibility for it, was what will I say here? It was a consequence of me not having understood the scale of this and some of the second or third order effects. And this is a way, there's a lot of different ways to do this. And of course, the way that I had suggested doing it is turned out not to be the best way after some research and some input from our housing coordinator, or excuse me, our contracted building director, department, whatever we're calling them. So basically what we need to do is to create the BPL the way that I think you guys were asking me, like, why aren't we doing it this way in the first place? And I just didn't understand the question and ended up giving you an answer that you didn't ask a question to. And I think we all just kind of got ourselves turned in circles. And so I went back and looked at this and ultimately I think it's definitely best for the town that we adopt the BPL with the conditions in the ordinance. My original concern that kind of steered me away from reason was having an ordinance and not being able to properly attach a bilateral agreement to the chain of title. And so we're solving that problem by including the conditions in the ordinance, but then by creating a much less onerous document versus the plan unit development agreement and this limited use agreement that's attached here to the second ordinance. So what I'm asking you to do, if you have no further questions, and I don't believe this has a major fiscal or even a consequential impact on Barger either. I think, as I understand it, they're already down the road and building it. We had given them permission on public record, and this is us following through with the decisions that were made just in the formal ordinance. But we understand that, in this climate, this time, he wants to get this done before he gets socked in. And so what I would say is, please deny the second reading of the ordinance, and that will just give it a quiet, calm death, and then approve the first reading of this next ordinance, which includes the authority of the town manager to execute the limited use agreement, and we can just move on and pretend this all never happened.
Thank you,
Get the
Clay.
show on the road. Get the cars in the wash.
Okay. Any questions or discussion, or would someone like to make a motion as provided in the memo?
I will. Unless we have any other discussion. Okay. I move to deny the second reading of ordinance number 2022-08 and move to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2022-09, creating a business pedestrian limited overlay district for 124 East 9th Street and authorizing the execution of the limited use agreement.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Cranker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Bearma.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. That's the last substantive item on our agenda. So we'll now go to our closing public comment period. Start with any in-person comments. If you guys would like to make any.
Very interesting. I'm glad I can.
You've hung around this long.
I've come to a lot more. It's really, really good.
Yeah, thank you. Please do. I mean, and encourage other people too. It's really nice having people here too. Otherwise, we're just talking to ourselves and the computer.
We don't always have food, just disclaimer.
But jokes, we have jokes.
All right, so we don't have any in-person public comment. If there's anyone on Zoom that would like to make a public comment, please click the raise hand button and we'll promote you to panelist.
Who's still hanging on?
Just Melody. And
My
Carlos. Sleeping. All right, so at this time, we'll close public comment. We have a Parks and Rec Committee meeting coming up at 9:45 a.m. on the 31st. That I recommend people also tune into or come and watch. Then we've got a regular meeting on the 12th and an open house on the 14th. That everybody should definitely come to as well. And it is 9:06 and I adjourn the meeting.
I would also say go see Trustee Jordan at the farmer's market.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Be there tomorrow, actually, because
I redact everything I just said.
yeah.
If anybody is still listening, there's also the community builders tomorrow morning.
All right.
All right.